I want you to know I wish that I didn't have to tell you this story. I really wish I didn't have to tell you this story, but I do, because you're going to ask me. And so here you go. I'm going to tell you the truth. You're going to be told the truth multiple times, because you're going to hear me tell the story a few times. And this is the beginning of a transformative road trip that Spirit led me on, the Creator, the Yahweh of your heart, or your Savior, whatever you want to call it. That's how I got here. Anyway. And my name is Calloway, and it's not because my mom named me that or my dad was a hippie or something like that, but no, I made a conscious choice to change my name, and that kindness is not... Listen, it's for you, and what I mean by that is it's for me too. It's for my mind. It's about being kind to myself. It's about agency. It's about love. It's about understanding your worth and your power. And I hope that somehow from one of these hours, like sitting here listening to the things that I have to say and the places that I've been and that I'm still okay, will somehow motivate you. And that's really all I really want to do, is to share my story and work through my healing too while I heal you. So I called it cosmic healing, or... Anyway, this is my story, and I'm just gonna throw it out here for you. My name is Calloway, and this is Loving Kindness Every Day. I guess you can call this another intro, okay? Collective healing. Let's go. Yeah, let's go. We're first gonna start off with the story.
And it's literally moving backwards, and it's sitting, then it's getting really close to your point of siblings. It's actually right there. So that's the, but it had been building that whole year. Mars had been going backwards. It's a 6-month cycle when it retrogrades through a sign, So and so it's been like,
it was a big deal,
and so Mars pulls the trigger, like, let's cut it out, let's sever the thing, or let's call this out. Let's speak truth to power. Let's get moving.
I literally did that.
Yeah, totally.
My brother was arrested.
Yeah.
Like, I had him arrested.
Oh, wow. Far out.
Welcome to Loving Kindness Every Day, where you will hear everyday language such as 4-letter, 5-letter, or words that your mother might call profanity. Please be advised. Sarah.
I got hooked up with a group called Saprea, who they basically help the people who were like victims of child sexual abuse. They give like free resources. They have like a free groups that you can join, and also they give you a free 4-day retreat where it's like literally like a hotel, like next level retreat experience, but it's also like clinical, where so they teach you a lot of things, a lot of like, just like the language, and to understand shame and to understand how to move through and past all of these kind of like deep traumatic things,
Yeah.
So my grandmother died when we were together. I don't know, did you ever meet her sister? But she had this sister named Aunt Rosetta, who ended up...
I don't think so, no.
Yeah, I don't think... Because I remember I only met her once, I think, and like during the time where I knew you, and like, I don't think you met her, but she ended up getting COVID real bad, and we ended up reconnecting on the phone around the same time that I was like living in Orlando, and I was kind of just mommying and working. And so like I would mommy and I would work and like kind of like walk down the street and talk to her, because she's like in her 90s, and she likes enjoying the company and I like enjoying the company, and we just kind of bonded, and I would like read to her, and like we just had like a good relationship or whatever. Apparently my mother's brother, my uncle, had a good relationship with her before the arrest, and after she was also alienated because she talked to me.
Got you.
It was like that big of a deal in the family, where it was just a massive like rift that was created. And so she she loved me, and was honestly a real big supporter and love to me, and I to her. Like I would go and visit her in Boston and whatever, but she was honest. Like her and I were just honest together, like I'm talking to you, like there's no reason to lie, you know what I mean? Like, so she would just be like, yeah, they were really lovely, and now they told me they can't talk to me because I talk to you.
It's just, how horrible is it that, your family would want to protect someone who's actually dangerous and who harmed you for such a long period of time? Like, I just can't understand that thought process. I don't get it. Like, I just don't understand. Maybe I don't want to. Maybe it's one of those thought processes you shouldn't understand.
Do you know what the thing is? Is actually I learned, it helped me so much because I felt like that for so long. Excuse me. It's allergy season here too. I felt like that for so long, Sarah, and one of the things that helped me so much, that empowered me so much, was learning from Saprea that is so common. It's basically every single person. Like, I did go on this retreat, and when I got on the retreat, every single person had that same story. Literally everybody has that same exact story that I told you, where it's like they get embraced first, and maybe it lasts a day, 2 days, a week, maybe a month, if you're lucky. It every time comes full circle, even for people who were dead. Like, somebody shared with me a story where it's like their grandfather abused them. They end up telling the mother, they have the little period, and then it's like, well, you just wanted to ruin my father's memory, and this didn't really happen. And, they just full circle come back, still very, like, it's just a psychological thing. It's a human thing. And I think that's why, that's why I asked you to speak with me, and I appreciated you talking to me, because I feel like my calling in this is to actually open up the conversation. I think it's important that, like, had I maybe known this then, I would be a different person. Like, had I known this when we were together, for example, I wouldn't have maybe treated you in those ways that I had to realize when my mom was acting wild in front of me. I would have been able to recognize it. And I think there's a lot of power in just speaking about it and understanding that, like, you're not alone, and, like, that these things are unfortunately common. Like, for example, the handyman, he's unreported. So they say the reported numbers are 1 in 6 men are victims of child sexual abuse. So he's definitely unreported. How many of his friends do we know that are unreported? How many people do we know that are unreported? And it's like, because we don't talk about it, we don't realize how common it is and how much is happening.
It's so common. As you're talking me through this, it's making me think about all of the relationships I've had, and I can only think of one other person I've been in a romantic relationship that wasn't a victim of childhood assault. So
wow. I
have, like, a lot of people in my life who've had very similar experiences, and none of them have reported. So
whoa.
I think it's very valuable to tell this story so people have the courage, and understanding that they're not alone, and, because you're right, the experience has typically the same, and from what I've understood, right, you get that initial support, like you said, but then people turn their back on you. Your family, the people who are supposed to love you and value you the most, end up turning their back on you, which is just such a horrible, I can't even imagine. So I think you telling your story it's needed, and I think it's beautiful that you're sharing and that you're allowing yourself to be this vulnerable. I think you're going to touch people, and you're going to inspire them to heal and to come forward and to go on their own journey of just, like, finding that peace that I think so many people are lacking.
Jessica Bradley.
And then let's see. So I was looking at my phone here, and then I was reminded of the fact that I had to tell you about what happened. That wasn't yesterday. It must have been the day before yesterday that we spoke, or was it? We didn't speak. Was it yesterday? That was.
Yeah, it was the day before. I think it was Tuesday.
Yesterday. Tuesday. Yeah, there it was. Okay, I was like, I know. I was at the state legislature actually when you called me. And it was wild because my phone was on Do Not Disturb because I was there. And then all of a sudden it started ringing. And I was like, that's so weird. It's like ringing, but it was like ringing softly and kind of like whatever. And I was like, oh, that's weird. And then I looked at it, and then I saw like on my phone, it didn't look like anyone was calling because it was on Do Not Disturb, but it was still ringing. And so then I looked at it and I was like, that's so weird. And then I looked and I did the little phone thing. And then that's how I got your phone call. And I don't know, did I call you back or whatever? But, like, that's why I was like, I have to tell you about this crazy phone call. Like, it just goes in line 100% with all this kind of stuff that honestly has been happening and is actually wild. So that happened anyway. So I had to tell you about that.
Well, thank you, because that just really seals the deal for me that this is meant to be.
It was actually wild. And I was like, I think I said it to you on the phone at the time. I was like, remember that I have to tell you about this phone call and why it was crazy or whatever.
You did.
Yes, that was.
Yes.
So that's what happened. literally my friend that I just met, and dare I say, I don't know, I feel like all of these kind of things is like because of you, or like because of like, this is all kind of like connected. It's really crazy. So I have to sort of explain it to you if you'll allow me.
Please, all ears.
So I found out about you guys and about Saprea through my victim advocate when I was really kind of at rock bottom, and I reported the abuse with my brother. My brother, I want to say probably started when I was like 2, because I started having really bad sort of symptoms when my daughter got to that age. But I know it started before I remember, because it was like my first memory. So it was like, and my first memory was like too sexually advanced, if you get me, like to be like, oh, this just started, like, you know. So it was like I knew that. And then I knew from a series of conversations from one conversation that my mom had with me that that memory was like when I was like 3.5 going on 4. So around the time that I turned, my daughter turns 2, I literally just moved to Atlanta. And the whole case and everything was going on in Florida, where I'm from. And so the victim advocate was kind of like trying to hook me up with services and things like that. And really kind of, Jessica, I was kind of really disappointed, because I was at the point of like, I suppose understandably aggressive with like, not like, I was kind of like, why won't anyone just say it? Like, you know, you call a therapist's office and then I'm like, hey, I want a therapist who's like, at that time I wouldn't have been able to have the language of trauma informed and all that kind of stuff. But like for my thing was like, I need somebody who could talk to me about incest or whatever. And the people are like, they can't even like say the word on the phone. And it's like,
you're supposed to be the experts. If you can't say it, how far are we going to get here?
Do you know what I mean? That's like literally where I was at. So it was kind of like, it was sort of like, oops, what just happened? Uh-oh. I'm fiddling. There you are. I'm trying to multitask and it's wrong. I'm gonna stop. I was kind of frustrated, but you know what? One thing that gave me a lot of hope was the connection that she made with the Atlanta group here. Like, she put me with the Atlanta group because she's like, oh, well, you're in Atlanta. And the victim advocate was like, honestly, like, she was really, I remember her name was Caroline. I just love you. Her name is Caroline. I remember she was so lovely because she was really helpful, and she was basically like, hey, you know, think about juicing celery in the morning because it like really helps you, you know, like not be depressed, and like here's some other things, and also like here's this group, and maybe if the therapists aren't working, you can join the group and whatever. And so that's like actually how I came to find out about Saprea and to really join the group. And one of the group leaders, and I'll tell you her name because I podcasted with her, so I can, like, you know, it's fine. But Jocelyn, that's how I met her. You know, she was really instrumental in kind of helping me feel like I wasn't alone, in that sense of like understanding that like my path wasn't, you know, it's like horrible. Like, so I don't want to be like, it's not bad or whatever. But at the same time, for me, I have found a lot of solace in understanding that I'm not alone. And understanding that it's not super wild, the things that I went through, you know, so to speak, right? And through that process, I heard about retreat, but like I had been going to you guys' groups for like on and off for maybe 18 to 24 months before I ever went to retreat. Like a lot of people that... A lot of people who are in the group would be like, oh, I wish I could go back to retreat. And they're all like talking about it and stuff like that. And I'm like, I don't need that. I'm not going to go. Not for me or whatever. And I had kind of like signed up and then like didn't, you know, I said to you guys like, oh, I can't do it because there was also like I was going through a divorce. There was a whole thing. There was a lot of stuff going on. So in the background, I'm... sort of thinking maybe then I kind of got into another relationship, and I started sort of realizing that, oh, these things are cyclical. You're kind of repeating patterns here, you know? And especially hearing that from other people in the group that they're like, yeah, I'm good for like a year, and then
it comes up and rears its ugly head again.
That one, So I started being like, maybe I should go to the retreat thing. Maybe I'll give that another stab. And I knew it'd taken a while. The last time I kind of got like approved and like I'd gotten to that stage. So I sent an email and I was basically like, hey, this is where I'm at. I'm going to do it again. Everything's like calm now. Also, I live in Georgia. I'll just drive to that one. I don't have to go out to Utah, blah, blah. Can I go? And so then I feel like that was maybe in September. And then I was set up with an appointment to speak to you in December. So I ended up speaking to you in December. I remember I made a big day of it. Because I said I was going to go to the spa. I usually go to this one spa called Jeju. It's like my spot. But I decided to go to this other one that people were like, oh, it's bigger. You should try it, da-da-da-da. And I said, okay, I'm going to psych myself up, for this phone call with you. And I was like, all right.
Well, you never know what it's going to be. And I believe that because I think it's intense knowing you're going to talk to yet another therapist. How detailed do they want? How detailed are they going to get? Because there is this imbalance with that kind of call. So I can really appreciate you saying, I was going to make a day of this. I'm going to gear myself up because it does. It's nerve-wracking to be on this call, not knowing what they're going to ask, how detailed on your personal information, especially about something that's so hard to talk about. And it's like, okay, am I going to have to bare my soul? And how transparent and to what degree? And then they're going to be, okay, thank you very much, goodbye. Like, thanks so much. Thanks so much for that call. I've got to go suture myself up now for a day. You just don't know, and it's scary to anticipate.
It's very true. And also I think it's something that people don't realize, that like talking about the trauma is like re-traumatizing. Like having to to go back through it.
I think just acknowledging it's so hard, and I hope this doesn't come the wrong way. I just find it very courageous to be able to acknowledge that, and so to be on a phone call that you're expecting to acknowledge the service that we offer. That's hard. That in and of itself is an intense step to take and do, and so that's. Yeah, and that's why I really appreciate and can chuckle and laugh with you that, I had to gear myself up for this, because it's an acknowledgement that most people, like you said earlier, a lot of people can't even say.
Well, and I'll tell you about that as well. Like I couldn't even talk about it for years, but I will say that like I don't know, do you remember, but I think I caught you off guard because I was like at a restaurant and I had my Bluetooth in because I had been like sitting there waiting for the phone call, and you were kind of like, will I call you back? Like, are you ready for this call?
Because I'm not used to, you totally caught me off guard because I wasn't sure. Is that a good thing? Is that like, oops, I forgot? Is like, how okay are you with this if we talk in a public arena about this? Because I want to be respectful to whoever else is on that call. And so I could totally be, I don't remember saying that, but I could totally see myself asking that. Like, oh, is this still a good time? Like, how do you want to do this?
So then, yeah, I did. I think you did. You said that because it was kind of like that. And I explained to you, I was like, no, I'm going to the spa after this. And then you kind of said something like what you just said right now. And then we spoke. And we kind of did the whole thing, and I explained to you, like, basically like what I just explained to you right now, like where I was at with everything, and I was like kind of ready to do it, and that I'd had that call before, and then we kind of like, I don't know how it kind of came up, but I remember we started somehow talking about like spirituality a little bit, and you were like, because I was talking about the timing of like going, because I remember in the back of my mind I kept thinking, I want to go in January. Like, that was just like, it was like in my spirit, like to go in January. Like, that's what I was like, I'm going home ready to go. And you were basically like, yeah, we're booking for like May. And I was like, and I didn't say anything to you about January. I didn't tell you. I was just, that's what was like in my spirit. And so then you said to me, you said something and you were kind of like, I don't know, but from our conversation you sound like you could be spiritually minded and you can just sort of like set your intention and make the phone call. And I've had people who have told me that like the people say, oh, you can't go on this date, and then they had the date in their mind and that's the date that they went. And you said that to me. You were like, oh, at least like 2 or 3 people have told me that or something like that. And I always have the consciousness where it's like, what God's done for others, he can do for me. Like, I'm not like, there's no respecter of persons. Like, I'm like, okay, that's all I need to know. I'm like, somebody else did it? I got you. I'm good. We got it. So I took your advice. And I literally sat there in the truck for a second. And I was kind of like, you know what? So I'm going to call now. I'm going to do it. That's what I'm going to do what she said. I'm just going to call now. And I'm gonna see what happens. And so I get on the phone with, you know, the lady, who answers. And she's basically like, oh, yeah, like, you know, we could put you in for May. You know, does this day work or whatever? And I was like, well, you know, like, do you have like a cancellation? Can you put me on it? And she was all like, what date do you want me to put you on for the cancellation? And I was like, what are the options? And so then she starts like naming out the dates. And I was just like, basically like, I was like, listen, Linda, I live down the street. I will go to all of those dates. I was like, put me on each and every one of those dates. And she was like, wait, hang on. She comes back and she's like, listen, when do you really want to go? And I told her the date I had in mind, because I looked at the calendar already, and I looked at like my ex and I share custody with my baby, so I already had my date. I was like, this is the date I want to go. I want to go the 29th of January. She's like, all right, fine, that's the date you're going. And I was like, all right. And that's why I hung up and I called you right back.
And that was such a surprise. Kindness, I have to tell you what a beautiful this experience has been, getting to know you and the beauty you have brought, and to just me personally, not just to the work that I do, but to me personally, because I don't think I've ever had anyone call me back so like that to say, hey, guess what?
You said that too. You were like, whoa.
Yeah. And it happened. And I'm not saying that it doesn't happen, but I usually don't get that half of the story. When I say goodbye, it's, I know my team. I know that they will take care of you. I trust them to treat you with care and love. But to be able to hear that half of the story of how it turned out was just tremendous and so filling to my heart, because I know, so right now I do some clinical calls, I do healing webinars, kind of my primary focus of the position I'm in as a clinician here. But I know that I did work the retreat for close to 4 years as one of the retreat therapists there. And so I get to hear so many stories there, but not that I'm back kind of stationed at the office. I don't get that as often, to know what's the second half of that story. And so it's so just affirming and beautiful for me to hear, and have had this time with you to hear it yet again come to fruition. Because yes, what I've already shared with you in that phone call was, I've seen it so many times where when people, much like your story where you said, I've heard about it, but nah, it's not for me. It's not for me, right? We're just like, that's not for me. And it wasn't, right? When you say it's not for you, it's not for you, because you're so in tune, you know it's going to be for you. But when it comes time of, oh, now it might be time for me. People can have this happen so quickly, coming to retreat and coming to our services, where it may happen within a matter of weeks or a month. It could be a matter of years before they come. But what has been echoed and taught to me from our clients and our participants has really been that when it's supposed to happen, what they have felt, and this is again, right, because some people, I want to be respectful to those who may not believe in the supposed to, or have this additional side to them, or it just happens differently. I don't want to discredit their experience either, but what has been told to me time and time again is that it happened in the time that it needed to. As much it was as hard to wait, or as fast as it may have been, or as slow as it was, it happened in the time that it was supposed to happen. And that is just beautiful to hear again yet from me, from the story that, your experience, that, okay, I sent it out and it came back, and it was meant to be in the time that it meant to be, because I think you also shared with me that we since have closed that location that you went to, and you got in before. Had you waited till May?
We haven't even touched the surface of that story, because that's actually the next few layers of a mind-blowing situation that I have to unpack to you, which brings me to my next thing, that you have to let me tell you how I truly feel about you, which is that you're beautiful, and I'll tell you why. Because like I said, it was really hard for me to talk about it. It's like you said, certain people, like, we're not there yet, and like you said, I do believe that everything is divine, so I'm willing to be cheeky and discredit the people who are like, no, there's no right time. I'm like, you'll get there. You just don't understand how to drive yet. It's okay. But that's how I feel about it, and that's just me. So I'm gonna say it. But I just feel like what I noticed for me was that it was a really hard topic. Really, I really don't like to have to talk about it now. I feel like I have to talk about it, because if we don't talk about it, it keeps happening, and then that's why I have to talk about it. But I don't really want to talk about it. You know what I mean? Like, nobody wants to sit here and talk about child sexual abuse and incest. It's not a fun topic. We could talk about something better, happier, right? But like, when it happens, and it happened to you, or it happened to somebody you know, or it happened to somebody in your family, or it happened to somebody you're connected with, it becomes a all-encompassing, world-changing thing, for your family, for your situation, for everything, especially the longer that it's kept under the rug, and, just yourself from the work that you do, that it's, has to happen, right? But I struggled a lot with it. And then sometimes I would come to group, and honestly, your videos really made me feel warm and like this feeling inside. I won't pretend. It was just kind of like this warm feeling inside, and I would be like, all right, you reminded me of this therapist that I almost could try to tell about what happened a long time ago. Because it was like, back then I couldn't even open my mouth. I was just like, like blinded like that, like just totally hands over the mouth thing. But I don't know, your spirit, or something about your spirit, made me feel warm anyway. And then when I got to talking to you on the phone, and I said this to you the other day when I called you, whatever, like, I was glad that I didn't know it was you at the time. I didn't know who I was talking to, because I didn't realize it was you until I got to retreat. And then I saw the videos again. I was like, no, don't let that be the same Jessica. I was like, that's not Jessica.
Please don't let it be the same Jessica.
I was like, that's hilarious. I was like, we love her. I was like, she's been great from the beginning. I was like, I'm not surprised. I was like, see, that's how God works. I was like, I wasn't surprised then when I saw it was you. And I was like, you know what? I suppose it's like even more of a layer as to why I want to, gosh, I don't know, it's in my heart. I want to advocate. I want to advocate for you. I want to advocate for you guys and what you're doing. And about the location closing. So I'll say that I do believe that everything is so divine. And there's this, I'm going to try and connect these 3 dots for you as far as this. So I went on this road trip. And I believe that the whole road trip couldn't have ever happened had it not been for that conversation I had with you. And so this whole thing becomes like this, and I take a step backwards. So I have the conversation with you. I go to the spa. The spa is like my happy place. It's also my personal like anti-suicidal idealization places. It's very good for just resetting the brain. That's where I'm at. And it's also a place that I feel like you open up yourself to connections, because sometimes you just end up having conversations that change things, and conversations that really matter. And I ended up having one of those conversations after the retreat. And so I have to take a few steps backwards. So retreat. So I get to the retreat really sort of like, I'm a little bit anxious. Obviously, your face, that one. Clenching teeth, the whole thing, right? I'm feeling that. And I ended up driving, and I get there, and the lady who ends up meeting me there is wearing the same like off-brand jacket that I'm wearing. And it's interesting because it's like not a super popular brand, and we're both wearing it. And so I'm like, oh, that's a little like, Easter egg from the universe, and then I get into the car, and on the back of one of the people's bumper stickers, they have Colorado. I'm wearing a sweater underneath my jacket because it's cold that says Colorado on it. And I'm like, okay, another little one. And then one of the ladies that came ended up coming from a state that I had just visited that my ex-partner was like living in, that I kind of felt like just kind of like a little sentimental sort of thing. And I'm like, oh, that's lovely as well. So it was all these like little like universal kind of little things that were kind of leading me up there. And then I get there, and I'll tell you about my roommate because she's also podcasted with me, so I can tell you about her.
Awesome. I'd love to hear about her.
Yeah, so I get with my roommate, whose name is Madeline, and she's also gay, and so we have this like super queer. It's actually a very queer cohort. We had a super queer cohort actually at the I think we were at like 50%. Something like that. I don't know. We were bringing in the queerness anyway at that cohort, and her and I ended up kind of like just girl talking all night about girls and stuff or whatever, and we ended up chit chatting, having a good time, and we were kind of talking about. We then started talking about this project that I've been really involved with for a while with this film called 1946, and basically just a brief sort of little thing about that is it's basically a movie where it talks about it's a documentary that a friend of mine, Sharon Raggio, Rocky Raggio, made, and it goes through the history of the addition of the word homosexual in the Bible and questions, I suppose, the validity of it. And I talked to Madeline about that for a while. We kind of like connected on some things because there had been like past church trauma and things that had happened that we talked about. And so then she lives in DC, and we said, oh, like one day we have to like meet up soon and like just hang out or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And so I left it there, and then my friend Rocky and I did a podcast, and we did it actually sort of like this. So she did it on Zoom. I don't know how she recorded it. I'm not recording this. I don't know. I just gave up on it in the beginning. I was like, we got the audio, whatever. But I remember she recorded it, and then I wanted to do it with her face to face. I said, girl, I really want to sit down with you face to face. I don't really like the way it sounds when I'm doing post editing. I really have a strong rule. This is the second time now I've done this. You're number 2 where we don't do it face to face, because I really would rather sit down face to face. But I said that to her, we did it, and then I was like, we really need to do this again, like sometime soon. And she was like, yeah, we'll do that for sure. And she travels a lot, so I was like, we'll see you sometime soon. Then, no word of a lie, Jessica, like maybe 2 or 3 days later, Madeline from the Saprea retreat texts me and says to me, hey, I just got this flyer from my job. Your friend Rocky is coming to my job to speak. I'm thinking about going, or something like that. And did you see that? Why did that happen? Did you see that?
Maybe I did. I did see the fireworks going. I don't know.
What happened? Why did that happen? That's crazy. That was wild.
See, more celebration. More celebration for that moment.
I don't even know how that happened, Jessica. Like I said, this is my first hosting Zoom meeting. I actually don't even know. That was wild. That was crazy. So just like that moment, that's how I felt. It was like the universe did it for me. That was cool. That was crazy. So she texted me that, and I was like, well, this is crazy. So then I texted my friend Rocky, and I was like, why did I just get this text message telling me that you're going to somebody's? I was like, I'm gonna drive and come and see you. Like I googled it. I was like, 10 hours. In my mind at the time, I was like, 10 hours, that's nothing. I'll just drive. And I'm gonna go to DC, and also, me and Madeline are gonna hang out. We'll have a good time. So I was like, all right, well, that's what we'll do. So then I go one day to the spa. And I'm just having one of these kind of days. And honestly, Jessica, I was feeling kind of low. It was one of these days. I was feeling kind of low. The universe actually kept me from leaving because I was at like 3 o'clock in the morning. So one of my favorite spas in Atlanta is a 24/7 spa. I love it, 24/7, 365. The reason I call it my anti-suicidal idealization place is because you could be up at 4 o'clock in the morning thinking crazy. Just go to Jeju. Just go to the spa. Stop thinking crazy.
Dad, we need more of these 24/7.
I'm advocating for this big time. I'm advocating for this big time. It's my side time social project. Honestly, it's something that's in my spirit big time is to really put these. Oh, look at that. Oh, they're mimicking our did you? So you didn't do that. It's like
our expressions.
Our expressions. That's crazy. Let's see. Do it again.
I wonder if that's what it was. Wondering.
See? No. This one, I have to be really excited. They're like, no, you have to be genuine. You have to be genuine. The AI knows our feelings. It's actually creepy. But for real, yeah, it's something that I think is really important that I've talked to a lot of people about because it's like, it really helped me. And so that night I was there and I was feeling really low and whatever. And one of the people who I sometimes see there but never speaks to me saw me getting dressed to leave because like you have to put like this little uniform thing. And so they saw me taking off the uniform and they're like, where are you going? It's 3 o'clock in the morning. You think it's going to be better out there? That's what they said to me. And I was like, not that you're talking and you never talk to me and you're telling me not to leave. And then some other person was there and was like my buddy all night and wanted to talk to me. And I was like, well, this is what I needed. The universe just gave me exactly what I needed, which is the person telling me not to leave. And then somebody sitting next to me wants to talk to me all doggone night. So here I am. So then like they have like a sleeping room there. So I went to the sleeping room. I hung out for a few hours. I woke up. It's a little bit kind of far from my house. It's not like too far, but it's Atlanta and the traffic is, in Jesus' name, going to be better. I have a whole plan about that too. I decided this is my home. I decided this is my home and I have to fix the traffic situation here. That's my next project, but we'll talk about that another day.
I've heard about the Atlanta traffic, so I believe you, and I'm sure everyone else is being bored to resolve that.
Listen, I just think more bicycles. Everybody just needs to use more bicycles. That's where we're at, actually. And trikes. Bikes and trikes. But, okay, not now. All right, I might have to restart this meeting in a minute. But
no worries.
What was I gonna say too? So there I am at the spa, right? They want me to stay. I stay. I go to sleep. I wake up. I'm hanging out. I mentioned the traffic because I usually have this thing where I'm like, listen, I have to leave around 1 p.m., 2 p.m., or else I'm gonna have to stay until 8 because that's where I'm at. You leave at 1 or 2, or you stay till 8. Those are the only options for me. That's where I'm at. So it's like around 1 or 2. I'm sleepy because I was kind of up all night because remember I was going to leave at 3 a.m. So I didn't really sleep like that much. I'm sleepy. And I think to myself, you know what? I see this lady laying down. In my mind, she looks pregnant. And I think to myself, I'm going to lay down just for a minute next to the pregnant lady on the marble slab. So I lay down and I fell asleep. Doggone it, Jessica, I must fall asleep for like 3 hours. I was flabbergasted. I wake up to listening to the following conversation.
V from Asheville Sanctuary.
So I'm gonna lay down. So I go into the locker room and I see a woman on the floor who I thought was pregnant. And I laid down next to her and I was like, oh, okay, it's just me and the pregnant lady. We're just gonna be here. I promise you, that's what I thought. And this is funny because then I wake up to V saying, oh, how far along are you? To the quote-unquote pregnant woman who then responds and says, oh, I'm not pregnant. This is my menopause belly. Mm-hmm. And so then this whole conversation then happens, and I'm like, at that time, I have a whole personal moment where I'm blown away on a whole personal thing because I'm like, oh my God, if somebody said that to me, I just don't know, like, how I could feel, right? Especially like, but the way that she responded, it was just like beautiful grace. Strength and love and grace and everything. It was just like, whoa. So then she sits down and then she starts talking about Louise Hay and, you're talking about A Course in Miracles. And I'm here like, okay, so the divine has sent me like more angels or something to talk to because this is where that's why I said I have to tell you the whole story. I'm like, what is actually happening, right here? And, then obviously like, there was something that you did and you said that really stood out to me. And you were kind of sitting here to my right. And you kind of sat up and you're doing this thing with your hand where you kind of like had your hand straight up and you were kind of like touching your chest or like your heart, and you were kind of like recentering yourself maybe or something, you know, and you were kind of like, well, you know, you're like, oh, I want to ask a question, but like, you like really honored yourself and your space. You took a deep breath and you're like, well, like, tell me about your intentions. And then, you know, the woman proceeds to tell us like it was just her birthday and she's fasting for her birthday and this is what she's doing, you know, like for her spiritual practice. And then you were just like, oh, it's your birthday, like, let's love on you, let me tell you beautiful things about yourself. And then you just start like reading this lady from like, okay, well, let me tell you, your face is beautiful, I can't believe you're this age and you look like you're that age. And you just started going on to the point where I get up out of my little funk. Yeah, totally. And I'm like, you know what, let's get in on it. I'm like, also your arms are lovely. Yes. And we just start like reading her down and just giving her just like, you know, random love and just telling her how great she is, because she was great. And it was really a blessing, the things that she then ended up saying about life and, you know, just spirituality. We kind of had this whole conversation, which, you know, led me here to your beautiful retreat home center and everything that you guys are doing here, which I think is so I just think it's so serendipitous and divinely aligned, the way that I even landed here, you know, and how that happened, from even the dream that I had back when I was like in my early 20s to then knowing, okay, yeah, this is the place that I need to be, and then meeting you there and just all of these things. And I don't know, like, I guess I just wanted to share that with you. I just been feeling like I wanted to share that with you, and I'm just gonna leave that.
I love it. It was really after I was on my way back from a road trip, stopping there, and when I got back, I was like, this was like a highlight of just that whole moment of having this such a sweet, random, you know, like we were, you know, three naked ladies. You were sleeping on the marble slab. I like was laying down to like also take a nap, and she walks by and I just was, you know, like admiring her pregnant belly. and I loved in that moment, for me, what happened was her response was so gracious. And I knew when I said it that I knew there was a choice point where I could feel embarrassed or bad. And I was like, no, it's good. We're good. And like the way she responded, and we just dropped right into this place of like love and appreciation and grace. And it felt like the word grace really rises to the top, because there was just this flow, and she was just, you know, in this radiant birthday moment. And yeah, I just felt like this outpouring of love for her and felt really comfortable sharing it. And I was like, come on, receive it, because she was like, you know, that. And then I love it because you were sleeping still. We were talking quietly, but then you just popped up. You're like, I gotta get it on this.
Well, I was actually awake. I just didn't, y'all didn't know I was awake. I was like, I had woken up and I kind of heard the conversation. I was just kind of like,
yeah, what's going on?
You know, when I opened.
yeah. And then it wasn't until later I had gone swimming and I saw you sitting and eating, and I was like, oh, there's that woman. I don't even think I had gotten your name yet. And I came over and I was like, that was such a special moment. And then we introduced ourselves like formally, and it was pretty quick, but you said, hey, I'm gonna be on a road trip up to DC, and I was like, well, come stay with me in Asheville. And then we were like, okay, and then that was it. You know, it was just this like very flowy, kind of quick, sweet connection that landed you here, and I'm so glad you're here.
Frank, the master astrologer.
Time you were born?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, we can pull up your chart then. I have my computer with me. You want me to grab it?
Yeah, let's do it, man. I want to see how this works.
Okay.
Make a believer out of me.
Okay.
Or as Christians might say, an unbeliever. Who knows? I was raised in a very, you know, like, my mom would frown upon this.
Your mom would frown?
Oh, my mom would frown and tell me all types of things.
Yeah. From a Christian perspective? Or?
Oh, for sure, my mom's a Christian, yeah.
Well, you know, it's interesting. Christianity had its time of kind of attacking astrology, but really, Christianity wound up saving astrology in the West. Because you know who really attacked astrology was modern science, the Enlightenment.
I didn't know that.
When the Enlightenment came about, then there was a real purge of astrology.
Interesting.
And the first book written in English, the first astrology text written in English was called Christian Astrology. That was the title of the book.
Ever? The first astrology?
The first astrology book ever written in English was called Christian Astrology. Because what it was there was basically like monks and, Christian mystics and, they wound up preserving a lot of things that was even unorthodox to the church, that they wound up like traditions of like, brewing and traditions of herbalism and traditions of astrology and esoteric systems and alchemy and like a lot of this stuff like that maybe the church at large would kind of persecute.
Right.
There was other factions within the church that were like helping hide this stuff and keep it alive.
I love that.
Totally.
I love that.
Yeah, pretty
to be honest with you, I feel like Christians shouldn't attack it because you've told me about stories of the stork. I know you've heard about the three wise men.
Totally.
But that's a mistranslation or a popular mistranslation of what they actually were, which were astrologers.
Right.
They were following a star. They were
Totally.
magi.
Yes, exactly.
That's what they were like.
Yeah.
You couldn't have like.
Yeah.
So it doesn't surprise me when you tell me about the Christian astrology book, but.
Well,
wow.
you know what? The Star of Bethlehem. They were following this. So what that. So what that was. Is that right around when Jesus was born, there was a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in the sky.
Okay.
And so the two stars, Jupiter and Saturn, which is called the Great Conjunction, it happened on winter solstice of 2020. Those two stars met together in the sky, and that's and that would be like a star. When those two planets would meet together, it'd be really bright. And so it was like it would be an omen, and it would carry a whole bunch of celestial meanings of like, celestial omens. And so like a prophet's about to be born or a war is about to happen or whatever,
Yeah, I was about to actually ask you that. So are you trying to say that, am I understanding you correctly when you tell me that the same constellation lineup that happened with the Star of Bethlehem when Jesus was born also then just quite recently happened in winter solstice 2020?
Correct. It wasn't in the exact same place in the sky.
Right.
But those same stars met
the same setup.
Yeah, totally. In a different place in the sky. Yeah. When Jesus was born, it happened in Pisces.
In Pisces.
Yeah, in Pisces.
What does that
which
mean?
is interesting because Jesus is kind of a Piscean energy, like mystical compassion, kind of bodhisattva, like turn the other cheek, like
okay, Frank, yeah, I get you.
Like high, like emotional energy that is so open and expansive that it's heightened to like spiritual, like spiritual level, you know, like very much like a peacemaking, like Christ-like energy. Like Pisces is a very Christ-like, bodhisattva-like, Buddha-like energy,
Okay.
And so
then can you tell me about the other lineup, like where it was and what the energy was like for that? And
in 2020?
Yeah, because that seems, is it just me or does that seem very significant?
Well, the one in 2020 was a really big deal.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, it was a big deal because the one in 2020, so the way it will happen is those stars will meet up, Jupiter and Saturn. So these are the two planets that you see that are furthest out from the sun with a naked eye. So without a telescope, if you look out, the two furthest out, slowest moving planets are Jupiter and Saturn.
Okay.
And so they were considered like the great timekeepers and the stars that you could follow to like track these longer cycles of history and cultural history and stuff to the ancient world, right?
Okay.
And so a lot of cultures pay attention to them, like very closely.
Yeah.
And so there's this understanding that they put together in, I think in Persia, in the Middle Ages. They maybe had awareness of this in the Arabic or Greek world, like before then. But that those two planets, that they have a a 800-year cycle, and they come together in all the earth signs for 200 years, then all the air signs for 200 years, and then all the water signs for 200 years, and all the fire signs for 200 years. And you can track it. It's like clock. I mean, it's just a clock. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, this is what clocks are. I mean, literally, our language around clocks, minutes, seconds, that's astronomical terms for how we divide up the sky into 360, you know? I mean, our clocks are just, the original clock is the sky, you know? And so, yeah, like totally.
Okay, we're going to have definitely a tangent
Yeah.
on that in a
Yeah,
little
yeah.
bit, because
Yeah.
but I don't want to usually lose it, because that's interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah, totally.
But, whoa.
And so there's 800-year cycle with Jupiter and Saturn, and when it switches from its shift in earth signs to its shift in air signs, every 800 years it changes things deeply, like politically and socioeconomically on planet Earth. And what winds up happening is that for the years leading up to that, it's like a time of kind of like concentration of like centralized systems and concentration of centralized powers. And so it's like a time when like empires get built,
Right.
You know, it's times of like globalization and empire building and kingdom building and this sort of stuff.
Do you have examples of that? For example, like where you could say like the last time it was in this way, this is what happened.
So the last time it was doing that, it was during the buildup of the Persian Empire and the Chinese Empire in the Middle Ages, which were both huge kingdoms. And then when the switch happened, and then they started going into air signs, Jupiter and Saturn, so every 800 years, then literally to the year Genghis Khan was born on that star. And then the next time it came around, Genghis Khan basically launched his military campaigns and brought down like the two biggest empires on, you know, probably on planet Earth at that point in time, you know? And so there's this, what that means is that it's just there's a decentralization of concentrations of power and wealth and resources, you know, and kind of like a breakdown of these large scale systems, right? So 800 years before that, it correlated with the collapse of the Roman Empire. And 800 years before that, it correlated with the breakdown of I guess that would have been the late Bronze. No, that would have been Alexander the Great, and moving through Eurasia, and a bunch of you know, really powerful kingdoms coming down. There was a big one in Persia then too. 800 years before that was called the Late Bronze Age collapse, which was the basically the end of like kind of ancient Egypt and Babylon, and like these real ancient world empires and kingdoms that have been around, you know. And even 800 years before that, there was this thing called the early, I think it was called the Earlian Akkadian collapse or something, which was the Akkadians were like kind of the origins of the Babylonians. And so this has happened like several times, you know, where there's just these large scale political entities
Picking up a theme,
you know, kind of like the Soviet Union, China, and the United States, you know, like these huge world powers, and then they wind up kind of unraveling, you know, and like, and you know, and that can sound kind of scary in a way, like, oh my god, things are falling apart or whatever. But really, when you think about it, like, and you kind of like when you get outside of like the mindset of thinking from like, you know, kind of being inside and loyal to that, to like the machine, you know, like when your loyalty to the machine and the machine kind of unravels, it's kind of scary
for sure.
but you got to think about all the times in the world this happens, and all the people who are actually oppressed by the machine, marginalized by the machine, who the machine's not actually working so hot for them, they're just getting colonized by the machine, you know. And then when the system starts to unravel, it's actually a decentralization of power, and it's a localization and a regionalization of more local powers, and people having more autonomy locally and regionally, you know. So it's in a way we kind of have this pop culture narrative, I think, of, oh my god, when shit hits the fan, this is scary, you know.
Yeah.
But in some ways it's like it's like a mixed blessing. There's also, it's like kind of liberating when we hit these historical cycles of, you know, of such massive social change like this.
I really love that, Frank. That's a refreshing perspective, and it resonates with me. I like that a lot.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Let me ask you this though: where did that winter solstice 2020 star, the Jupiter Saturn, where did they line up?
They lined up at 0 degrees Aquarius.
What does that mean for us who don't speak?
Yeah, so it lined it up in early Aquarius, and you know, some people would say that this is like, you know, the pop culture idea is like we're going into the age of Aquarius. You know,
explain.
And
what
so
that
Aquarius
means.
energy is it's associated with 2 planets, Uranus and Saturn.
Okay.
And so Aquarian energy is the energy that is kind of like innovative and creative and not necessarily stabilizing. It can kind of be like upheaval. It's almost like revolutionary change and like radical technological developments. And oftentimes technological developments that are like, that do things like upset the status quo and the centralization of power and what people are used to, you know? So like a classic kind of, I mean, just think of all the things happening right now on planet Earth, whether it's artificial intelligence or cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, you know, just really even the internet at all, like the whole nature of the internet, social media, you know, like there's just the total decentralization of everything, currency, media, governing structures, you know, communication networks. I mean, everything is kind of being radically and rapidly technologically innovated in a way where it's, you know, it's not necessarily stabilizing, it's innovative and it's changing stuff. And it's, but you know, and some things that are tradition and old get tossed out, and it destabilizes things, and some things that get old and tossed out, they kind of need to go. You know,
that's fair enough.
Like,
for sure.
There's a lot of stuff that kind of needs to go, you know.
Yeah.
And so Aquarius energy is the energy that kind of really it's kind of like I guess we'll pause for a second. Hey.
Okay. All right. So you were telling me about the Aquarian energy.
Yeah, it's this archetype of radical human cultural upheaval and change and evolution. And like, so for example, Pluto just went into Aquarius, and that's going to be there for about 20 years. So Pluto is like power, underworld, shadowy stuff, you know, like it's associated with Scorpio, you know. Every time Pluto goes into Aquarius, there's a rapid evolution of weapons technologies on planet Earth. So you can just go back throughout time and look at every time Pluto goes into Aquarius, in those years, we're inventing all sorts of new weapons. Like that little window of time in this 250-year cycle, those 20-year increments are always like these times where there's like, whoa, we invented a whole, like we just took a big leap in like weapons developments in that time, you know? And so like, because that's like the idea. It's like, I mean, this stuff is, it's not that it's moral or amoral or ethical or not ethical. It's just kind of beyond ethics, but it's just like, there's just the reality of certain energies on planet Earth and what they do, you know? And so Pluto and Aquarius, that just makes us innovate weapons technologies, you know? But Aquarius in general, that's what it does, you know? And so we're seeing, you know, we're entering this era where the rate of acceleration of change of human technology and culture is, you know, it's exponentially exploding, you know? And we're gonna, I mean, you know, it's like someone in 1840 versus 1860, they may not have been like, wow, it's a completely different world, you know? Someone in 2010 and someone in 2030, it's like, holy shit, this is the same planet, you know? Like,
that's, when you put it that way, that's very valid.
You know?
Like, because I know, you know, I'm sure we all have our stories. I can think of what it's going to be like in 2030, and that's not very far. It sounds like the future, but it's like
totally
freaking like 6 years away or whatever, you know?
Yeah, we're living in a sci-fi novel from just, you know, 10 years ago. You know?
Yeah. I mean, okay, so let's see how it works. Tell me something. Let's do the little the numbers and the graphs and the map thing and make a believer out of me.
Give me your wait a second. New birth chart. 2111, Miami, Florida. So you were Pisces rising. You didn't know that?
What does that mean?
You know what your sun sign is?
So I'll tell you a true story. I went to this party once and everybody was talking about their signs and they were like, I'm this rising and this is my moon and all this kind of stuff. And I was just like blown away. I was like, I don't know what y'all are talking about, bro. Like, I know I'm a Leo. I got that for you. I know that's where I'm at right now. I'm a Leo. The rest of it, nah. I don't know what it means and you have to explain it to me like for real. What does that even mean?
And you're a K2 Venus. You have a strong Mars. Okay. So right now you're in a time in your life. You're in a certain era of your life that's called the nodal returns. Okay?
The past. Maybe we're gonna do the past.
Well, it's been going on for a minute. So like the last year or so.
Okay. All right.
And so it's like generally a big change to so let's just go back here. Here's your south node.
All right, we're looking at a screen with charts that it just whoa. There's charts and graphs on the screen.
Charts and graphs galore everywhere.
And graphs everywhere. What does this mean?
Screen
squares
after screen after screen of lines and charts and graphs.
I've seen this one before on the internet. The circle one.
Yeah, of course.
Didn't understand it.
I've seen the circle one.
But this is whoa. Okay.
So this is a North Indian chart, which is very similar to the chart they would have read in ancient Persia and Babylon and the Arabic and Jewish world and even ancient Greece. You could have gone to Baghdad 1500 years ago and shown someone this and they would understand what it looks like. They would be like, an astrologer would have been like, oh yeah, of course, you know. Wow. Or India or you know.
Okay.
So so you're in what's called your nodal returns. And so you have the south node. So the nodes of the moon are what causes eclipses in the sky. So when there's an eclipse, the sun, the earth, and the moon are lined up.
Right.
So when the sun and the earth and the moon line up, then we wind up getting a shadow, either of the earth on the moon or of the moon on the earth. But either way, the sunlight gets blocked, and we wind up with a new moon. We wind up with all new moons, wind up causing all new moons are solar eclipses and all full moons make lunar eclipses. And so the points in the sky where those happen, they're called the lunar nodes. There's 2 points in the sky that are always rotating around. It's 18 years to move all the way around the zodiac. Now, the south node, in Vedic astrology they call it K2, and the north node, in Vedic astrology they call it Rahu. Those are these like points that are responsible for your ancestral experience, your ancestral karma, and your soul's evolution. And so where you're at right now, and what you've been in for like the last year or so, is this those points, the eclipses that are taking place, they are like this. They're actually where they were when you were born. So the eclipses that are happening, for example, the eclipse that's happening on April 8th, next month, it is going to be about that far off in the sky from exactly where it was when you were born.
2 fingers, whoa.
You know? So, yeah, like 2 degrees from where you were born, you know?
That's crazy.
Yeah. And so that is a game changer in life, you know? And so when you think of where this is taking place in your chart, it has to do with these 2 places, and they have a lot to do with resources. They have to do with your access to support and other people's resources and shared resources. It can deal with your trauma. It can deal with your personal healing journey. And then they have to do with your second house. That's where the big one's coming up. And the second house deals with, well, it's kind of interesting, right? So you're born. Where's the first place you go when you're born?
To your mom's arms?
Yeah, to your mom's boob.
Yeah, I was going to say that, but I didn't want to be too forward. But you go on the titty.
Yeah, you go to your mom's boob.
That's where you're going, straight away.
And that's the source of nourishment of life, right?
Yeah.
And that's your mouth making contact with its food supply.
Right.
And its physical safety and security.
For sure, yeah.
So the second house is the house that deals with food, physical safety, security, attachment, like your attachment styles. It has to do with your finances and resources. It has to do with your values. And the things you value. And so this is kind of like the source point of how you land in the world and feel safe and secure. And then your sense of stability and feeling safe and secure. And it has a lot to do with your early childhood too. Now, this point where your south node is, opposite your north node, that's the point that winds up having to do with like shared and collective resources. It can be inheritance. It can be, think of it this way. It rules sex, death, trauma, healing. So how do you oftentimes wind up with other people's resources? They die, they leave you money.
Yeah.
You mate with them, you share that container of intimacy, sex, and you share your resources with them. And so, or even, the person that left you money probably also, there's a good chance, left you unprocessed ancestral trauma that made it down through the line. All of us are carrying intergenerational wounds from our parents. And so, or marriage container, you share resources with someone, you have that level of intimacy with someone, oftentimes you're also wounding each other. You're not just, you're supporting each other, and hopefully you're supporting each other's healing process. But this is like Carl Jung's Psychology 101. The purpose of your partner is to wound you, is to stir up all of your unprocessed wounds, and all your unprocessed traumas, that's why relationships are so hard, and that's like such a major place where we do the work, And so so you have your nodes, your eclipse points are in those houses, and they're being stirred up this year, for the rest of this year and last year. So there's like generally going to be, and it could be as simple as a change to your diet, or to your mouth, to your teeth, or to your language, how you want to speak, how you want to sound, like these sorts of things. Like sometimes it's very literal, like your mouth can just literally be, oh, what am I putting in my mouth? Oh, I want to change my addiction habits. Oh, I want to change when I'm eating. Oh, I'm having to get a tooth pulled, Or it can be very metaphorical, Oh, I want to change, the eloquence of what's coming out of my mouth, Or, oh, I really want to up my game with my finances, or I'm increasing some level of, I'm getting closer to making money with the thing that actually inspires me, Or I'm just upping my game with just practical responsibility with my finances and my physical security, that sort of stuff,
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
All of that.
Mm-hmm.
I will ask you, is this normal? Is this something, because obviously this is what you do,
Mm-hmm.
so is this, when you look at this, are you like, yeah, I'm used to seeing this kind of thing, or is this different, like, what stops somebody from being like, yeah, you know, I heard that before. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like, is it different? Is it, when you look at
like
that,
each person is different?
Oh yeah, obviously,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I mean, like, for me, what you said sounded significant because we were like, do you understand? There's like 2 finger lengths between, like, you know what I mean? So like,
totally.
Is that something that you see often, or?
No, I mean, there's oftentimes people come to you because their life is having some mounting pressure or some decisive moment coming up. So, you know, it's amazing how people call up astrologers when they just have a feeling of, whoa, I need some support. And then, of course, then they say to you, this is what's going on. And you're like, you look at it and it's like, oh yeah, of course, there's about to be an eclipse there. Oh yeah, of course, Saturn's about to cross that point. Oh yeah, you know, like, there's about to be, Jupiter's going to station retrograde on that point. Oh, Venus is about to station retrograde. Oh, Venus is stationing retrograde in your house of marriage. And you call me up 2 weeks before, you know, and that's about to happen. And of course you're feeling like, you know, Venus, love, is about to go backwards in your house of marriage. You know,
I see.
It's only going to happen every, 8 years.
Oh, I
so,
see.
oh my gosh, that partner you met 8 years ago, now you're like, either want to decide, I'm going to get married to this person or leave this person. And these are the pressures on it that are going to decide, time to make a call, you know? And so you see that ahead of time.
And you, I get you now. I understand you now. And you, by looking at that, you're like, oh, okay, I understand now why this person's calling me. Because I can see
always
each time.
You know?
Yeah,
always.
okay, that makes sense now. I get you.
Like you got Saturn rolling through your first house, you know?
What does that mean to you?
You got, well, it's usually where you get real busy. It's usually game time in your life to structure and order your life in a deeper way. You know?
That's valid.
It's like, yeah, it's usually like you're trying to rebuild a foundation in your life in certain ways. That's the foundation for the next 30 years of your life. You know, certain sacrifices you're willing to make, certain responsibilities you want to start carrying, certain responsibilities you want to let down because you're making room for other stuff, you know. And it usually makes you busy, super busy. And it usually makes you super serious about, this is game time of my life, you know. And if you've been neglecting things or ignoring certain things, you start feeling the consequences. You're like, oh right, I've been ignoring that for the last 10. I've been smoking for the last 10 years, and I know I should have quit, but now Saturn's in my house of health, and all of a sudden I'm feeling like I can't really smoke anymore. Yeah, like this isn't gonna be good. Like I can't do this for another year or two.
Dang.
Like I quit this shit now or start feeling kind of bad, you know? Like, so that's how it works, you know? So you got Saturn in your first house, you know? Like if we zoomed ahead, you know, if we zoomed ahead and we saw, here's Saturn, here's your ascendant, we can go see these Saturn retrogrades. Saturn's going to move forward, and then it's going to pause pretty close to your Jupiter and pretty close to your Saturn in July. So there's probably certain things that you're like, I'm really moving these forward. This is what I want. This is what I'm willing to sacrifice for. This is my responsibilities and how I'm contextualizing them. And then this summer, going into the fall, there might be like, actually I'm reevaluating this, or actually this needs some editing, or actually this needs some reevaluation, or actually I'm changing the game plan up like this or like that, you know?
Okay, I hear you. I hear you. But like, say for the skeptics, let's go backwards, right? Because you're saying like this might happen, this could be this way, you might feel this way.
Yeah.
Let's say if we started 2 years ago,
Okay.
right? If you went like October or whatever, where are we at?
Okay, let's just go
March.
back 2 years.
Like if we went like
I'm just gonna go back 2 years. Okay.
May. If we went to May.
Okay, I'm in 2022. Saturn's close to your moon.
Because there's very specific significant things, and I just wanted to be able to see like if you're going to be able to say like, hey,
what's up
I know.
with your mom?
Whoa.
Huh? Yeah. Yeah. What was up with your mom a couple years ago? Yeah.
What's up with your mom? And you mentioned mom again.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So what month are you in?
I mean, let's just go back to when Saturn's directly on your moon.
Whoa.
So here we go. So I'm in the end of 2021.
Okay.
Moving forward, Saturn is going to be on your moon in that winter of 2022, and then pause, and then go backwards, back up onto your moon. The winter of, now we're at November of 2022. So yeah, like 2022 had Saturn crossing over your moon and backing up and going back pretty close to your moon again. And your moon's in the 12th house. And so that's once in every 30 years. So what that would be classic of, right? With Saturn over your moon, it would be like, it could literally be your mom. It could be some sort of like closure or like changing situation in her life, you know? It could be, it's your emotional comfort, right? And like your inner emotional landscape that you got from your mom. So the wounds you got from your mom, the trauma coping mechanisms and patterns that go back to your mom or her life somehow, then that stuff is like really, it's like coming up. Time to deal with this stuff, right? And so, or it could be, literally, I see stuff like that. It could even be your breasts, literally, right?
I'll tell you.
Like I see stuff like that, and it's like, oh, that person got breast cancer with like a harsh Saturn transit over their moon in their 12th house, you know? So it's like, it could be really literal, or it could be really metaphorical. It could be a really metaphorical emotional process that somehow ties to your mom. Or it could be really literal, like your breasts, or, oh, my mom fell and broke her hip and then, or passed away or whatever, you know? So like,
wow.
Yeah. So I'm curious, like,
Yeah,
now that you hear me say all that, what's your response
What do you have
to
to say to that? Exactly.
Yeah.
I hear, because I was very specific. I said, tell me something, and you did.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Totally.
So, just yesterday, my mom and I had a passionate conversation, and it ended very well.
Mm-hmm.
In 2022,
mm-hmm.
I moved like 3 times. I moved like maybe 4 or 5 times,
mm-hmm.
in total,
mm-hmm.
and my mom didn't even know where I lived. We
mm-hmm.
didn't talk. We were at code
mm-hmm.
silence
mm-hmm.
because of my brother.
Mm-hmm.
I told you I do a lot of advocacy for child sexual abuses because my
mm-hmm.
brother abused me when I was a child.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was I had a lot of deep emotional issues with her, with him, with the whole
mm-hmm.
thing really, that
mm-hmm.
very much came to a head in 2022.
Yeah.
Very much.
Totally.
Very much. And
mm-hmm.
wow. There's very much a big shift in that, which blew me away with the first thing that you said, Frank, because you kind of have alluded to this sort of like rebirth,
mm-hmm.
which started for me in like May of 2022, and actually then ended up with me changing my name.
Oh,
that's
wow.
why when we first started, I said
mm-hmm.
that's my, because like I know sometimes when people do like, I don't know, numerology, they want to know like your birth name or whatever. That's
mm-hmm.
why I asked. I was like, "Oh, do you want the birth name?" Or
mm-hmm.
I legally changed my name just because of all of.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of things that were going on.
Yeah.
But.
Yep.
Wow.
Well, check this out. You want to see how interesting
do
this stuff gets?
Do it, bro.
Okay.
Whoa.
So Saturn on your moon in the 12th house. So the 12th house is a place where there's separation with those things, right? I mean, it's not uncommon that if you see a sun or a moon in the 12th house, that the people were really estranged from their parents, or even maybe lost a parent. Like you can see it. I mean, I've seen it multiple times. A sun in the 12th house, oh, my dad abandoned the family. Or a moon in the 12th house, oh, my mom passed away when I was a kid. Or just they were emotionally removed or whatever, right? So when you see Saturn transiting through the 12th house on your moon, it's like there's a like Saturn is like, it's like
divorce.
Yes, it was
divorce.
Yeah, it was a divorce with your mom. Saturn through the 7th house, you see in the house of marriage, you predict marriage. You can, if you have friends and you see they're not working on their marriage and it's just slowly getting more and more contempt and more distance, and you watch that Saturn hit their 7th house, bam, divorce. Saturn brings in all the consequences of the last 30 years. So all the consequences of most of your life in your childhood hit with you and your mom in 2022, right?
That's very valid.
Yeah.
That's literally what happened.
Now check this out, dude. See this Mars? Mars is going backwards in 2022. Mars is conflict, right? And Mars is like, you know, it makes things happen, it gets things moving. If it's frustration, it's pull the trigger, and it's conflict, right? Mars stations near your fourth house point. Fourth house is home.
Marriage.
Well, it's home. It's literally your home and your physical domestic life and your home space. So you said you moved a bunch that year.
And
right?
That's when I got divorced.
Oh, and you got divorced too. Oh, wow. Okay, yeah, yeah. Right. So you got divorced. So that's gonna rock your emotional world. Probably your divorce. Now check this out. Probably your divorce. Whatever was the psychological patterns, the trauma coping mechanisms, the developmental traumas that played into your attachment to that person, and eventually, you know, whatever work you did with that person, but also the work you didn't do with that person, and that, you know, you eventually got divorced and separated, that stuff ties to your childhood and the stuff going on with your mom and your siblings.
1,000% it did.
1,000%.
No,
right?
it did though.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Like it did. Like it was actually...
Yeah. Like literally exactly that.
That's what I'm actually saying to you.
Exactly, right? Totally. And then check this out. That Mars that's moving backwards, it's... God, dude. It's crossing... So it's going backwards to your third house. That Roman numeral 3. That's the point of siblings. So you've got Saturn on your moon, your mom, your emotional safety and security. And then Mars is moving backwards from your home and your you know, home place, getting divorced, moving out, whatever, moving physical locations and homes. But then also it's moving backwards. It's like this, and it's like this frustration and this heat and this violence and this, it's Mars, it's the god of war, you know, and transgression and, you know, like, and it's literally moving backwards, and it's sitting then, it's getting really close to your point of siblings, you know? So it's like...
What month are you in?
Now I'm at, this is actually the beginning of 2023 now, when it's actually right there. So that's the, you know, but it had been building that whole year. Mars had been going backwards. It's a 6-month cycle when it retrogrades through a sign, you know? So like, and so it's been like...
It was a big deal.
You know? And so Mars pulls the trigger, you know? Like, let's cut it out. Let's sever the thing. Or let's call this out. Let's speak truth to power. Let's get moving.
I literally did that.
Yeah, totally.
My brother was arrested.
Yeah.
Like I had him arrested.
Oh, wow. Far out.
Like for real. That's
Holy
what happened.
cow. Wow.
It was a lot of Venus war with that. Yeah.
Yep.
It was a big deal. That's why it was a really big deal. That's why I said to you,
that's interesting.
That's why I said to you, tell me about the past, because I felt like if you could see it, then I know you made a believer out of me.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, if you say you have a map, you should be able to see where I was.
Yeah, totally.
And daggone, didn't you?
Yeah, it's interesting, right?
Whoa.
Yeah, and so, you know, but here's where it gets really good, right? Well, I mean, check it out. So, oh, dude, this is fascinating. I mean, so check it out. I'm not joking or making this shit up. So you see this? Remember I was saying that the eclipses south node, and see how your south node is conjunct. It's in the same place, in the same sign and house as this is the planet Venus. So check this out, dude. Remember what I was saying about that house, that 8th house? The 8th house is trauma. The 8th house is sex, death, trauma, alchemy, healing, right? The south node is your ancestral wound. It's the energy moving down through the intergenerational wounding process, right? When the south node is in the 8th house, I actually have the south node in the 8th house as well. Generally, you probably have some crazy shit going in childhood. You generally have some intense stuff going on. You have some ancestral energies moving through that literally they would talk about this like in the ancient world as like, this is like a hungry ghost, like an unresolved ancestral energy that's like a ghost being passed on down the line, like an addiction or an abusive pattern, right? Violence or domestic abuse or sexual abuse, you know? It's like a ghost energy. Now, where is it at in your chart? It's on your Venus. What is your Venus? It's your sexuality. It's your sexual reproductive organs. Venus is, I mean, that's what Venus is, the goddess of love and reproduction and fertility. And so it's very common, South Node Venus 8th house people, they wind up with like sexual trauma, basically.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
You know?
Interesting.
So you have the signature in your chart for possibly having like sexual trauma, you know? And then you have, you know, this experience. And I guarantee you, I mean, it's crazy, but I guarantee you if we went all the way back to, if you had the dates and the times of when that was happening with your brother, you know, we probably see, oh, Saturn crossing over your Venus, or oh, an eclipse hitting your Venus type of stuff, right? And then like we would see something happening that is tying that to the cycles now, right? And so, but where astrology gets really good is, you know, it helps you understand how you heal.
That's what I want to
you know? Like it gives you a map of the energies you're working with to heal, you know? And some of these things, I mean, you know, I'm not fatalistic, right? Like I'm not fatalistic. Like I exalt the human imagination and creativity and empowerment and agency. And if you had my job and you did this thousands and thousands of times over a decade or two, you would start to understand how fate really works, and why almost every ancient culture on planet Earth took that concept extremely seriously, you know? And why most cultures, you know, go to, you know, hunter-gatherers in Africa and sub-Saharan Africa, or go to ancient Persia, high civilization, you know, or ancient, you know, India or whatever. Like, dude, it doesn't matter. All over the world, you know, human beings had deep, sophisticated understandings of fate and the agreements you're making with the gods and the paths of destiny that are unfolding, that you signed up for this stuff way before you even landed here, you know? Like, you know, and you came here and then these experiences happen and it creates, you know, I mean, this is really interesting, right? I mean, just the nature of the work of what you're doing, how you share about it and what you've told me so far, it makes so much sense. You are, our wounds, our traumas often become, if we work, you know, if we do the work and we really show up, you know, they oftentimes become then, they're the guiding lights of our you know, our gifts and blessings and offerings in the world, you know? Like that's the bottom line, right? You know, like that's the bottom line.
Yes.
And then when you're in it, it's just like, oh my gosh, how could this happen to me? Oh my gosh, this is not deserved. Oh my God, you know. But then, especially if you stay close to your heart, stay close to your soul, stay close to, you know, healing and the right people and support, and you know, then you wind up 5-10 years later, and it's just like, whoa, of course, I had to go through those wounds, because it equipped me now with this knowledge, with this experience, with this resilience to bring this to the world, help people in this way, you know? And so you see a lot of that in the chart, you know?
That's so interesting. Now,
you're a healer. You have the sun in the house of healing in Leo. Like it's you're maybe not a doctor or an acupuncturist, but there's a I can get in there and help people heal, you know? Like with Leo type strategies, through getting out there and talking and expressing myself, and you know.
I do hear you. Yes, I do. I mean, so I feel the need to reiterate very specifically, because I know this is your job. I don't want to know about the future.
Yeah,
so,
sure. I won't tell you. Yeah.
But I would like to ask you this, because you mentioned a few things that really stuck out to me. But when we first started talking, you mentioned, and I was kind of more asking you broadly about your job and things like that. You mentioned almost like a self-growth toolkit type of a situation, right?
Yeah, sure.
And then also you mentioned trauma and healing. And you then were able to really kind of like pinpoint some specific items where you could, you know, I don't know this from Mars, like obviously I'm just looking at charts and graphs and numbers. It doesn't mean anything to me, but you were able to pull that up, and like straight away you're kind of able to be like, oh, this is, you know, this person probably could be somebody with childhood trauma, you know, sexual trauma, or something that's happened. You know, like you're able to pinpoint certain things about me that could be points to identify healing.
Yep.
Right?
Totally.
So I guess my question, I say all that to ask you, Frank, like, how can somebody who is like me in the sense that maybe they have experienced trauma. However, they're not at the place where they can see it as good. Because there's something that you said that really resonated with me, and I say it a lot. Like, I quote the Bible, and there's this guy, I don't know, do you know the Bible, like, at all? But
I do.
So Paul, Romans 8:28, all things work out together for the good of those who love the Lord, called according to his purpose. I always say, there's a lot of things Paul said I don't agree with. I always say it twice. Yeah. There's a lot of things that Paul said that I don't agree with. One more time for the record, but like, that one I really do. Like, I really believe, like, in a, almost like how you said, like, in a earth cycle, we all tell the same story kind of a way. That is a story that we've heard from many people. It's not just a Paul thing. Like, I agree with that. Like, you literally just said that right now, because you were like, hey, this is what's going on. And also I agreed with you, like, you I feel like deep inside your soul somewhere you do sign up for it. You know what I mean? But how can somebody maybe who has a desire to see it that way, but hasn't really kind of like
but in a gaping open wound that's in a hard place and feeling like it's immobilizing them and taking their agency away from them?
That's the one.
And
that's
like,
the one.
yeah, totally. Like where do you go from there? And like, to basically reclaim your power and to reclaim like a sense of empowerment in your life. Like what is that process of trauma healing? I mean, there's a lot of things I would say to that. and let me say this. It's really interesting talking to you because so you know how you have a node conjunct Venus there? So my mom has a node conjunct Venus, and then I have a node conjunct Venus. My mom has her node conjunct Venus in the house that deals with children, and then I have it in my house that deals with early childhood. And you know what I found out when I was in my late 20s was that my mom was sexually abused when she was a teenager by her uncle, which started her having some addictions. Then she had me when she was 19, and had a lot of unresolved sexual abuse from when she was in junior high, and then basically had me right out of high school. And all those wounds were completely wide open and were being, numbed with addictions. And so my mom, you can see in her chart, there's like kind of a sexual abuse wound, and it's addictions, and then just kind of like passing that on to your kid. And then in my chart, it's like, here's this energy that is like in your early childhood, that's like addiction energy. And I grew up with a lot of addictions. And when I was at a really important time in my life, it was all in the chart, you could see it, really transformative time, I wound up supporting someone who was sexually abused by someone in our community. And that woke up for me, it just straight up made me remember when I was in college, my little sister saying something about how she thought our mom was sexually abused by her uncle because she was at a family reunion, and my mom was like really weird about my little sister being around her uncle. And I mean, at the time I just didn't know what to do with that. It's like, my little sister tells me this, I'm like, I'm a college kid, I don't know, and I just kind of forgot about it. And then helping this person at this festival, basically we booted out the person that was the sexual abuser because they were still doing it, and it was just like it was ridiculous, and I was on the staff of the gathering at the time, and so but that woke up for me this, I mean, I basically just like had this, like, I went home after organizing this whole festival, and I went home and I was just like, gosh, I should call my mom, and there's all this stuff about sexual trauma that's so fresh right now inside of me, and I'm just thinking about it. Call my mom up, and I'm just like, have you ever been sexually abused? And she was like, it's funny you asked, let me tell you the whole story. I was in therapy your whole childhood for this, and it was actually this huge thing. And I was struggling with like addiction issues at the time, and so I listened to my mom, her whole story in detail. She was telling me the instances and the years it was happening, and you know what the first thing I did was I I went and got a picture of my mom when she was that age. So I went and got a picture of my mom when she was a teenager. And then I went and I ate a little bit of mushrooms. And then I sat down and looked at that picture. And I spent like 4 hours crying and like weeping and wailing and just feeling my mom's body and like that in my body, you know, and then my addiction issues and how much that was my mom trying to suppress her pain, you know. And I was realizing, like, even though I'm a male-bodied person, you know, and even though I wasn't sexually abused as a kid, like the freshness and rawness of like the ancestral wound in the making, you know, and the intergenerational wound and how much it was passed from my mom's body to me, you know, and my addictions and my whole childhood, and it was really profound. And I just spent and I hadn't cried a lot throughout my 20s because of my addictions and because of my emotional suppression, and you know, and then that opened me up, you know, the portal of grief opened me up, you know, to just basically emotionally reclaiming myself, you know, and starting the journey of finding safety again, and you know, the journey of healing my own sexuality and all sorts of things, you know. And it was like a miracle. Like, I mean, I've been struggling with certain addictions, not hard drugs, but just, you know, tobacco, sugar, alcohol, caffeine, you know, but still, it's serious addictions, you know, those things that regulate your daily life, you know. Yeah. And I've been struggling with them for a decade, and especially smoking. And that's when my mom started smoking. She started taking cigarettes from her uncle after she was getting abused, you know. And I quit smoking. Like, I cried that day, wept, wailed, screamed, like was like visualizing my mom's stories, you know, like really going into the pain of it, you know, deep grief. Hacked up so much stuff, like when you're deep in crying, all the mucus and shit's getting dislodged from your body, you know, like. And that just, like, I quit smoking. Done, you know? Like, whoa. Just done, you know? And, like, and that just, like, totally changed my life, and changed my relationship to women, changed my sexuality, changed my ability to tap into my heart, my ability to tap into grief, you know? And so, like, so to answer your question, though, you know, is like, to get to a place to where you're using the tools to basically, I mean, what it really, I mean, God, you know what's fascinating? You know what? Check this out. The etymology of the word rape.
Okay.
It means kidnapping. When someone's raped, it's like you're stealing someone, you know? And you think of the evolution of, you know, I mean, not to get too off topic with these big picture things, but I mean, you think of the evolution of civilization and systems of slavery and systems of rape and patriarchy evolving and all this stuff, you know? What's happening is basically warlords are building up little empires, and they're going and they're slaughtering people, indigenous peoples and their neighboring peoples, and they're kidnapping them, and they're literally kidnapping the women, and they're bringing them back into these ownership slave systems to build up, you know, to build industries, you know, and like the original maquiladoras and textile factories in these early city states and stuff, you know, and you're taking people out of their cultural context and out of their containers, you know, and then you're just putting them in these machines, you know. But it's to get the point across, and the amount of how much that plays into at the origins of it all. Sex trafficking, ownership of women's bodies, you know, like, and that's what rape is. It's like a kidnapping, you know, of people out of their indigenous context and out of their culture, and then bringing them into these places where they're systematically exploited, right? And so like, that's like a systematic thing, you know, that happens in these like exploitive, you know, oppressive systems or whatever. But then, like, even on like the interpersonal level, once we're all freaking growing up in that system in one way, shape, or form, you know, like things like interpersonal violence and sexual abuse and domestic violence, you know, like, they are these it's the ongoing gaping open wound that's still happening over and over again. So if you're abused emotionally, sexually, physically, like basically what's happening is someone is stealing parts of you away from yourself. And that's why the journey of healing, so much of it is actually remembering who you really are. It's actually getting in touch with your true authenticity and the parts of you that get suppressed and hidden and exiled away because of the trauma makes you contract down and get small, and the trauma makes you abandon parts of yourself, because that's basically the act of rape. Is someone is basically stealing a part of you away from yourself. It's not completely gone, but you're not in touch with it, because of the defense mechanism and the protection mechanism that has to be there, So the healing journey, so much of it is actually getting containers, whether it's therapy or friends or community support groups, whatever, plant medicine. I mean, there's a lot of different ways. It's getting back in touch with your body in a way so that you actually start feeling again all the grief that's hidden there, that's suppressed under your depression, that all the anger and the fire and the heat and the inspiration and the agency that's hidden there under your suppressed rage, and so getting the experience where you safely, just getting the language of some of this stuff is even helpful, you know what I mean? Yeah. But then getting the containers to where you actually have the safety to feel back into those spaces again, And the truth is that we all actually, we actually can do it for each other too, That's why it's like that's what we really need is this, we need an en masse collective healing, ancestral healing work, and that's kind of what we're doing with the program we're running. That's the idea, is it's let's use this kind of what you witnessed today and experienced today, this kind of group therapy container of constellations, which is a very felt sense, embodied, you don't have to it's not getting lost in your personal story of he said, she said, It's almost like a mystical group dynamic, of a group therapy, experience. But then also having your map of your tools, your resources, your wound, your ancestral karma, your intergenerational wound, and then tying that in, And so because when you look at this, there's very specific things that you're here to develop and you're here to heal, and very specific resources you have to support you, But that healing journey is finding, containers like that. So that way you're tapping back in and entering those spaces. And it's and luckily in the last really just the last decade or two, the tools that have come to us are mind-blowing, like developmental trauma models and understanding. We can actually, and this is what I plug into astrology. It's interesting. I've been doing this for years. Just as my passion really is, you can actually look at someone's chart and hear their story, and you can tell based on their personality patterns and their trauma coping patterns that are built into their adult personality, how they protect themselves, how they guard themselves, how they manage and store their stress. You
can literally see that from.
You can see it in their chart. You can see it in their chart.
You could tell me from your chart how I manage my stress and what my adult coping mechanisms are.
You have you're showing up in the world. You have a strong Mars in Capricorn. It's just get me out there. I'm doing stuff. I'm showing up in culture. I want to do stuff.
Sure.
I'm making stuff happen. You got Saturn in the 10th. Put me to work. Put me in. I want to show up in society. I have offerings. I have stuff I'm delivering. You have. What I love about your chart is you have Jupiter in Pisces on your ascendant. That's just wonderful.
What does that mean?
Well, it could be, it means a lot of things. Generally, it's just really good. it's helpful.
Okay,
Okay,
we like that.
You know,
I like helpful.
it's auspicious. It's fortune. I mean, let's just put it this way. Okay, this type of chart, Moon in the 12th, K2 Venus in the 8th, you know, like even with a strong Mars, Sun in the 6th, like this type of chart, like if your life could have been harder. You could have felt less resourced. You could have felt like you had less help than you had. But with Jupiter there, where it rules Pisces in a good sign, Jupiter just helps mitigate problems, and it just offers protection, and it makes things. It's basically God's grace and mercy.
I was literally going to say that's
You know?
when it came to me when you were saying that. I was
Yeah.
like, that's God for me, because
Yeah.
Jesus know I'm for real about
Yes.
that. I'm like, you better have my back, because I've been for real about that.
Totally.
I really have been.
Yeah. That's what Jupiter is the guru, is the spiritual connection, is the higher self. It's your relationship to whatever prophet, Messiah you have.
Sure.
Like Jupiter is your relationship to God.
That's that Buddha type thing right
yes,
there.
totally. It's a very Bodhisattva, Buddha, Christ-like energy that you have at the core of your being.
That's
right?
lovely. I like that.
Right?
I'll take that.
And so check this out though. This is really interesting. So when you get in, like, just to give you an example, you get into these trauma models of understanding trauma and understanding developmental trauma and our childhoods, and then how we make certain, coping strategies off of it and certain adult personality patterns off of it. So like just throwing it out, like the type of patterns in your chart. So that Jupiter on your ascendant, that's like leaving pattern. Okay. Now that leaving pattern can show up in a lot of different ways, right? It can show up as like the daydreamer, right? It can show up, but what's going on is partially there was something like you're like a sensitive soul, and a sensitive soul that got exposed to trauma, and probably from the start, honestly, and so you're landing here on Earth, and there's a part of you that's like, yeah, I'm coming to embody, sure. But there's a part of me that's never leaving the spirit world. like I'm always gonna have one foot in the spirit world, And they call that the leaving pattern, because you can leave, the dense layer of reality really easily, Like, and whether that is transcendental meditation or fantasy novels or addictions, like it can be any of those things. One person winds up serious addiction problems, but a couple tweaks of the chart and that same type of thing can wind up, I'm just like into hardcore yoga and meditation, and I'm like leaving the body, but with a sense of like spiritual transcendence, not leaving the body from a sense of like escapism, and drugs,
right.
Like, and so, but either way, so you can see how that leaving pattern type behavior of being like a sensitive soul, being exposed to trauma, and also what's interesting is like even this, like having this type of job, doing something like a podcast, media work, like internet, like one of the ways we leave nowadays is like into the digital sphere, like the digital sphere is almost like replacing like the spirit world, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so having that type of placement in your chart, it's like, okay, spirit world stuff, digital technology stuff, just getting out of like the more immediate dense layer of reality, and so, but then also like, these two patterns, like when I see that strong Mars and that strong Saturn in those types of houses where you're like really out in the world and there's kind of a go-getter energy, and they're basically kind of like an ambition, so that is like, that's like the type of pattern that winds up tying into like trust wounds. Okay, like there's like in healing developmental trauma models, there's like specific wounds, like autonomy wound, trust wound, attachment wound, attunement wound, love and sexuality wounds, this sort of stuff, and they kind of compound on each other. They all start with like your attachment, they all start with connection to mom, attachment, and then, but when you wind up with this sort of pattern, that's like someone who winds up with, especially with your Sun in the 6th, because that's a house where you really want to take care of work and burdens and responsibilities. Does that resonate?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get it done.
So there's probably stuff in your childhood where it's like where it's like, how do I stay safe? Or how do I get approval? Or how do I get love? Or how do I get acknowledgement? Well, I carry some responsibility, or I carry the burden, or I show up, or I don't be, or I have some ambition, and then that can wind up becoming what they call, like endurance pattern behavior, where you're like an endurer. So you show up in the relationship and it's like, cool, like I'll show up, I'm responsible, I'll carry the weight, like I'll be, like you can count on me, like the like does that resonate? Like that you can count on me, I'll show up thing, right?
Yeah, for sure,
And so that's tricky because it works both ways. Obviously that's a value, right? Like all these things have values and they all have shadows, right? It's obviously a value to be like, yo, I'm responsible, you can count on me.
Yeah.
Like I'm dependable, cool, check, that's helpful.
Right.
And also when you really get into the literature of like trauma healing and the way it plays out in relationships and stuff, you get into these sorts of things with like codependency patterns and stuff, where it becomes like, it kind of becomes like an unconscious strategy to keep someone dependent upon you, or to not have to depend on other people. Oh, I'll stay safe as long as they're more dependent upon me than I am them, or I'll stay safe as long as I feel value. I can maintain my self-esteem as long as I feel value because I'm kicking ass and doing the next thing and showing up for everyone. And so you can kind of see how the shadow energies creep in just because of the trauma filter, and the experience of all of our different traumas and how it plays into this sort of stuff. So when you look at the chart, you can see that stuff, and then you can start to see basically the light and the shadow of these different patterns and start to spot what to be careful of and what to look for in yourself. And then when you wind up actually counseling or in these group therapy containers using this sort of toolkit, it's really helpful because you can start saying, well, okay, what's the shadow of K2 Venus and Libra in the 8th versus how does that energy show up well? How does that play into how you have to develop certain things with Aries? How does, what's a strong, Mars and Capricorn look like versus what does it look like when it's imbalanced?
What does it mean? Is it because you I won't pretend I get lost each time when you do
of course. When I get specific with astrology.
Totally. Oh my gosh, each time, yeah. It's like science. It's like you're like a scientist, and then they're like talking about very specific body parts.
Molecules.
Wait, each time I'm like, which one is it again?
Yeah, totally. So I mean, you throw out the Mars and Capricorn.
Right. Okay. For example.
So that is a fucking powerful energy. That's exalted Mars, strong Mars. My daughter has it. One of the best things about her. Like it can make someone athletic. It can make someone, like they just take action. They know when to just like get moving.
Sure.
They don't get stuck. Yeah. It can also make you, if you feel hurt or you don't feel safe. Oh man, it can make you stubborn as shit.
That's fair.
And almost like steamroll over someone.
That's very valid.
Yeah.
Like
it's like I'll show up, count on me, doing it, getting the job done. It's cool. Oh wait a second. You're doing something I don't like. Okay, time to plow you over, or like, you know what I mean? And so you have to really look at these issues, right? Like you're an empowered person, you're an empowered person, and then you have to get into the nuance of especially if you're talking about resources or dealing with collective or shared resources. Capricorn really cares about things like financial responsibility and physical, like concrete, real practical responsibilities and resources and security.
Right.
And so like so yeah, but it's also interesting. I mean, it gets complicated and nuanced. There's other parts of your chart where I could see you really like this, South Node Venus and Libra. Those types sometimes have to be careful not to abandon themselves, not to be too giving, not to be too like that's kind of the more codependent like vibe, like, and just it's really like they basically want to sacrifice for the whole, sacrifice for the team, sacrifice for the relationship or the family, whatever, and then when you have like this North Node North Node Aries, in the second, like that's a lot of basically really getting clear about trusting your gut instinct, individuating, really just being able to not abandon your preferences, to actually stand up for yourself, protect yourself if you need to. It's a lot of like, what do I really want? And I'm going to be in touch with that. And I'm not going to sacrifice that default mode for my relationship or partnership, because of my trauma patterns, 8th house, and I'm actually going to realize like, this is what like the most truly empowered version of myself is. And because it's Aries and you got this strong Mars, and these are these Mars energies. So the Mars archetype now, the warrior,
Okay.
There's like a warrior in you.
That's why you mentioned it the first time, so I didn't understand you.
Yeah.
So you mentioned something about the Mars when you first pulled it up. You were like,
Yeah.
oh, you have something about Mars. And I was like, I don't know what that means.
Yeah, totally.
That's the warrior thing.
Yeah, that's the warrior energy. Now the warrior can go either way, like, and you probably get both of it, I'd imagine. Sometimes the warrior just, defaults into people pleasing and not protecting the self because, this is how you keep things stable, it's okay. But then other times, equally as imbalanced, the warrior energy winds up becoming belligerent. Now I'm upset, and now I'm exploding everywhere, and and the truth is, right? And the truth is a really strong warrior, a really strong martial artist, an Aikido warrior, right? Is like, nah, I got boundaries figured out. It's clear. I feel good about it. I trust my gut instinct. I know I can keep myself safe, and because of that, you're not going to see any belligerent energy come out of me. But what you are going to see is the second you transgress, you're going to get a very firm and fierce and graceful and polite, that's not working. Exactly. And if your energy comes at me in a weird way, it's just going to be like a little magic trick of like whoosh, 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 right back at you, without aggression, without meanness, without trying to harm you. Just actually, that's the thing you're throwing out. Why don't you you need to chew on that, actually. It's going right back to you,
Return to center.
Yeah. And so you have a chart of being a pretty empowered person, and at the same time, you can see how these patterns have played out. I'm sure if we really got into it, looking at your whole life and going through the years of what was a teenager and when you were 20s, and like you can see it, how the trauma kicks in, and it just makes imbalances in certain ways with these things, and oftentimes you wind up, it's on both sides of the spectrum, can get kind of extreme, and then what we're doing is we're like, and this is also to answer your question you asked a while ago about, what's those steps you take to reclaim agency and remember who you really are and get in touch with your authentic self and really go in that healing journey and integrate that. What you do is you regulate your nervous system and your neuroendocrine system, literally our hormones and our nervous system, our cortisol, our adrenaline, our nervous system wiring, our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. Like with trauma healing, we are actually getting in touch with a place inside of us that is calm and quiet and spacious and can slow things down, get out of the urgency mode, get out of the desperation mode and the reactionary mode, and it's just creating more spaciousness, so that way we have the gracefulness to see what's coming in, feel how it lands, choosing how we respond, and then enough of that feeling like, oh, this is my choice of how I'm responding to these things. Enough of that, you do that for a few months, you create new habits with these sorts of things, with your triggers and how you respond and what's going on in your relationships and how you're feeling about money and all the stuff that gets chronic stress about life and trauma coping patterns about life, and then you wind up repatterning yourself, and you literally wind up rebuilding new neurological networks in your system and changing your hormone reality, and you wind up becoming, and you wind up stabilizing. And then the way that in the past you would swing extremely, oh, my husband's being kind of rude, either I'm kind of suppressing it because I'm holding it together because I gotta hold the family together, or I'm freaking out and like blowing it up and losing my, it's like, no, you don't have to do either of those actually.
Right.
And then you don't have to bounce back and forth. You can actually just, whoa, we need to talk about this. This doesn't work for me, actually, And usually as we're getting closer and closer to those points where there's that kind of groundedness and wholeness and expansiveness inside ourselves, and just, really maturity, like usually part of that process is we're recreating ourselves, and the person that, the way that the trauma personality patterns have created, our basically our egos, right, is what it is. Our like our automatic default habitual modes of being, of that's who I think I am and that's how I'm doing with reality, and
I do.
And so I think as you get to the healing containers, groups, communities, therapists, plant medicines, whatever it is, like, and you increase your capacity. You're increasing your capacity for regulation, for peace, for safety, and that's such a huge thing, right? Safety, because it's like, especially if we're dealing with violence or sexual trauma, what's happening is that it's minimizing our capacity for feeling safe, right? And it's hypervigilance kicks in of some sort, and the truth is like, it's a dangerous world out there, and the truth is that there's all sorts of circumstances where you cannot be safe, but also oftentimes we're safer than our trauma lets us think,
Yes.
And so it's like breaking past that filter and realizing, oh, actually I can choose to feel safe a lot of the time, and like, and when the more and more you do that, you're building your capacity for safety, and then the more and more you do that, the more and more you wind up in circumstances and relationships where you are safe, and you start building new precedents and standards. That's what so many of us have to do coming out of, you and I were both born in the 80s, the 1980s of the United States, of Ronald Reagan, of the war on drugs, of the prison industrial complex, of the war machine, of, like, of the end of the nuclear era and the Soviet, like the Cold War. So much stuff. And talking about just personal trauma, the era of make them all like from the start, from birth trauma, make them all C-sections, like let them cry it out, don't breastfeed, bottle feed them all, feed them processed food, send them to the public school system, Like, it's insane. Like we're all kind of like, even people that aren't like identifying as like, I'm a trauma survivor, dude, don't kid yourself. Everyone walking around in this culture at this point in time is at some level a trauma survivor, and is a ball of trauma in there, like, and that's just real, and like some people get it worse than others. Obviously it's no brainer the way that class and race and gender and all these things play into it, but like, dude, this is a trauma machine. This culture is literally a trauma machine.
Literally, yeah.
Working a 9-to-5 in capitalism is dysregulating and traumatizing. Being in a car for 2 hours,
every day,
staring at a computer screen all day long, just trying to freaking pay the bills, have kids, like raising your kids. I have a kid. Raising a kid in this world right now, it's just nonstop. So it's like all of us have to be on this, essentially this quest of trauma healing and of regulating and of healing, So that way we are, able to kind of show up and create the world and the culture that we really want to create,
And also personally, no bullshit, I think is really helpful. Like I've been really changed. Like this has been a really transformative day for me because I kind of explained to you a bit about my upbringing, just kind of like, super Christian school, et cetera, so a lot of these things were like frowned upon, and just kind of like I just kind of was open and just coming into it, and just from the conversations and from the experience, I recently went to a retreat by an organization called Saprea, and they actually give out like free retreats for female-bodied like child sexual abuse survivors. Oh, cool. And it was interesting when I was listening to you talk because it really kind of reminded me of being there. And I thought to myself, I know that so many people will value this experience and being able to take that month off, especially, it's like what you said, like...
That's what they're doing. They're taking a month off to go.
Excuse me, no, here.
Oh, you're talking about the retreat we're doing here.
That's right. Yeah, they kind of came together in my mind because I was thinking to myself, no, it was only 4 days. But to be able to... That's what's happening here, right? Yeah. Is a retreat where it's really immersive. And I guess like my question is like, would it be like this? Is that what you're doing? You're taking the charts and you're then sort of like how you explain the things about me, and some of the things that you said, obviously, like I told you, really resonated with me. And then also some of the things were really helpful because I said to myself, well, you know what, doggone it, he's right. Like, you could just, you could be better,
Yeah.
It's like you said, healing, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And so I think to myself, geez, like I know that so many people would value from this experience, and especially if you're at that place where the conversation started, where we talked about a little bit like rock bottom, a little bit like feeling like you said, a lot of people do come, and it is divinely aligned. Or dare I say the stars aligned? All the planets are aligned because you could like, I understand why you're here, and like that you need to be here, and this is why. And I guess like, would you talk me through what it would be like? What's the experience like? If I say to you, Frank, like, I don't know, man, I'm seriously consider coming back. Or I might come back in May. What's it gonna be like? What's what's gonna happen for me? What's that gonna look like?
Well, I think what it will be is it's gonna be a mixture of. So imagine being in a small intimate container. So whatever, 8 people or something, maybe. So imagine being with a small group intensively for the month. And basically we're taking turns delving in to someone's chart and into their story and into the different trauma models and trauma healing models to understand, like, here's a map of your own personalized, basically it's in a lot of ways it's a map of your psyche and your psychology. It's also a map of your neuroendocrine system and your body and your health, So it's like really understanding, like, what I think is kind of like the cutting edge of like medical astrology. So just like taking a deep dive, really going into this, let's bust out your brother's chart. Let's bust out your mom's chart. Let's bust out your chart. Let's open this thing up as much as we can so you get as much understanding as possible. Let's see let's bust out your ex-husband's chart. Let's see the patterns that was going on with you and your ex-husband, like let's get into it like as much as we can, put as much meat on the bones, so it's like you're getting as much like illumination and context as possible, so you're just, we're basically building the capacity for understanding, really who you are and what you've been through as much as possible, and then and what your work is right now. Right. Where are you at right now, and what's coming up in these karmic cycles of your life, So it's like putting all that in place, and then it's constellating it, whether we're constellating the planets or constellating the chart or just constellating the circumstances of your life, whatever, but it's finding then the group holding the space to constellate it. And probably, also there'll be like, pretty basic, like, the somatic therapy toolkit, what's wonderful about it is it's not like rocket science, you know, like dropping into your body, dropping into safety with people, dropping into your felt sense awareness and your feelings as different things come up, you know, and having people hold that, you know, container for you. It's basically the toolkit to get into the material, hold space for it, let it unfold, and then kind of constellate jam with it, you know, because on one level it's like there's a conceptual, it's like on one side of the spectrum there's like a conceptual heady, cool, let's put the map together and understand it all, you know, and then there's like, oh, but let's actually feel into it all, you know, like, and then there's even like on the other side of the spectrum it's like let's kind of like put it in the field, let's put it out there for spirit, let's let these energies move through all these people, you know, and like that aren't the people that are the characters in this play, you know, but they're holding space for it, you know, and let's see what mystically, you know, kind of unfolds, you know. So yeah, I mean that's kind of that's the idea, you know, of the container we're making, you know.
It's lovely, yeah, and Jesus, it's kind of just like I had a conversation with somebody else, and we started talking about trauma, and he basically, you know, they basically explained to me like, okay, I got to this one point in my life where I sat down with my friend and I was like, let me tell you my story, and I started from like my very first memory, and I just went from there, right? And it sounds kind of like that, and basically then after, like, they were saying, like, you know, how it was helpful and the things that they learned about themselves and all that kind of stuff, and it's almost like that's what you're providing, because you know, because they said to me, like, you know, like, hey, I would advocate, you know, somebody do it with a therapist if they can afford that. Like, you know, it depends on where the person's at, right? Totally. And also, like, how they feel about it. Because, like, maybe I can sit down and I can talk to you, Frank, and I can feel, like, comfortable with you. But if I go to a therapist, I feel, like, some kind of way about it, right? Yeah, totally, you know? Totally. So, but it sounds like you're, you know, like, you're offering that, but a cheat sheet.
Totally. Yeah, right. Well, no, that's exactly it. That's what astrology is so good for.
Right?
I mean, it is amazing. I do astrology a lot. That's my job. It's what I do professionally, and, you know, and it's like, I can't tell you how many times. I mean, I have multiple psychologists in the area who they send me their clients very specifically because they know, you know, for some reason, the therapeutic container and the, like, establishing rapport and the like, I don't know, just building the safety and kind of like and the therapeutic relationship, it can take a while.
Yeah.
You know, to, like, get in there and to, like, suss it all out just based on the inquiry and the checking in with the person's daily life and where they're at and, you know, how therapy works.
Yeah.
It's funny when you got 2 hours and you got this kind of, like, wacko who has a map of your life, who's just like, what about that? What about that? You know, let's get in, you know.
Because didn't you say to me, weren't you like, what happened with your mom?
Like, straight up, you know.
Just what happened.
And it just digs it open. And then my job is basically as quickly as possible, because I want them leaving my office in 2 hours, within 90 minutes to 120 minutes, you know, 2 hours, an hour and a half. Like, basically understanding, okay, we got to the meat of some stuff, and you understand some additional layers now, and you're leaving with some practical advice, you know, like here's things I want you to do now that, you know, if someone has, you know, I mean, I was just looking at my friend's chart the other day that had, she was a North Node in Aries like you, so she's in this eclipse season with Aries, and she's actually a professional psychologist, and she's just like, she's in it, you know, but with insurance and licensing and the whole shebang and a full-time workload, and I mean, she's just like, dude, how do I make time to exercise and take care of myself and stuff, and I'm on Zoom a lot, and I'm feeling kind of depressed and sluggish and not good, like, you know, like I'm doing my life's path and I love this, and, you know, but I'm also just like, what's going on with my body, and so I'm sitting there with her, and it's just like, you know, and within an hour and a half, I mean, I'm just like, look, here's the plan. you need to exercise. You're sitting on a computer all day long. I don't give a shit what's going on in your life. I don't care what's going on. You have a North Node, Mars, and Aries. It's like the next layer of your work is you pounding out those Mars routines. You waking up and getting moving. Beach body, high intensity interval training, 20 minutes, move, You're on break, you got an hour off with your clients, you're taking a run, and of course we hit all the layers too. And then it's just like, oh, and you got this stuff coming up, you're setting boundaries. Like, how are you setting boundaries with your clients, with the people in your personal life, and we just kind of went through all the layers of practically what supports someone who's trying to really support that Mars type energy, and a lot of it was kind of just like waking up the warrior spirit, you know what I mean? Like it's like boot camp time,
Yeah.
Whether it's exercise or your diet or your to-do lists, or or even just the way that oh, I've been working all day, I'll get off work and I kind of just want to go watch Netflix, but it's like, no, you're going to the gym, like it's that you just do it for half an hour, but you're going to the gym, and then if you want, watch Netflix.
Sure.
But the difference of your body working out every single day, for a few weeks, for just 20-40 minutes, like, versus not doing that. Like, you go home and watch that Netflix, and the way you're going to feel after 2 or 3 hours, 9 o'clock at night when you're going to sleep, is just like, blah, I'm a zombie. Versus if you went and worked out, and that's so in your routine, and you're doing it for a few weeks now, you can still go home and watch Netflix for an hour or two, but, like, you're going to, like, be more alert,
Yeah.
You're going to make your dinner, washing the dishes isn't going to feel so sluggish. If you want to make love to your partner on a weeknight before you go to bed, like, you're going to have the energy for it. So many, like, you're just going to have the energy. And so it's just like, but it's like a very simple thing. And so it's like, we're literally, by the end of the astrology session, we're just like, we're just on the phone looking up, the personal trainer plans. And it's just like, bam, like you come to me, great. We illuminate what's going on, and here's the action plan.
I get you.
Your ass is getting a personal trainer. You're starting next week. We're not messing around and waiting.
I love that. I'll be honest with you. I'll be honest with you guys. Like, I was really skeptical.
Yeah, sure.
I was. I wasn't negative, which I think is important.
Sure.
I was open. In the sense of like, okay. I put my foot in the water. I wasn't thinking it was going to be hot. I wasn't thinking it was going to be cold. I was just like, let's see,
Totally.
And I've been, I can't deny, the supernatural. I can't deny the supernatural. I can't deny the spirit's hand in all of this.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Because I definitely feel it's like divinely aligned. And, I don't know. I think that it's going to help a lot of people, like what you guys are doing here.
Yeah. No, I think so.
I feel that way, and to be able to see your life in that way and map it out, I think is important. I am curious, though. I want to ask you one thing. One more thing. I'm gonna throw one more thing in there.
Sure.
You said before, you were like, "Oh, I bet you I could look at your map or whatever." Like, would you look at it for me when I was 3 years old?
Sure.
And tell me
what's going on.
Yeah, sure. Just curious.
Let's just post it out. So let's see here. Well, we could do a couple things here. We could go back to. God, we're going to do this year by year. It'll just take a second. I'm going to go back to your solar return charts. So this is Persian astrology. This is casting a chart on your birthday for age 3. And then we're also going to look at the transits, what's going on in the sky that year.
So you're doing multiple types, like
I basically do modern Western astrology and Vedic Indian astrology and Persian astrology.
You're like a master astrologer. Are there any other types of astrology that you do not do?
I do most of the Indo-European and Semitic astrologies.
Okay.
So that's like, tools from Greece, Babylon, Egypt, Arab, Jewish astrology, Persia, Iran, India. That's kind of like They just have an overlapping toolkit.
No wonder you reminded me of Jesus.
Yeah.
This is also, it's like,
But, and then there's yeah, I mean, I have a lot of ancestry from that part of the world. You know? I mean, I'm most of my ancestry, basically, it circles the Mediterranean.
yeah.
You know, like, okay, so then we're gonna go to
Like that I was born in Bethlehem kind of look.
totally.
I like it. I dig it.
Thanks.
Oh man, that's
All right.
crazy.
So 86. So when you were 3,
So
would've been 87,
let's try
89.
89. Yeah.
Okay, 89. Here we go. Let's see what's going on. Okay, so there's eclipses on your first and seventh house. There's Mars going over your house. There's Saturn going over your. Mars going over your.
If you don't see anything significant,
Yeah, no.
will you tell me 4? Just if
just
you
say
see
that. Say what?
4. Like if you do 1 year future.
Like 3 or 4, you're saying?
Yeah. Like
Okay.
yeah, if you were to go to
Yeah. I mean, there's just a lot. I mean, there's a lot of ways to see it. You know, like so check it out. So. So you have Saturn in Capricorn over your Mars. So Saturn your Mars. So that year 3-4, Saturn's crossing over your Mars. So Mars, when you're that age, around age 3, you're going through a Mars return. And so you know how, have you heard of Saturn return? Does that ring a bell at all? Okay, so at age 29, 30, Saturn is going back around where it was when you were born.
Okay.
So it's one full Saturn cycle, like 30 years. So it's like a very famous thing in astrology, because generally around age 30, you're like growing up and making sacrifices and changing things that you haven't like you're kind of killing the first immature layer of your adult ego and like really growing up in a lot of ways. So, and that's Saturn stuff, right? Like I was saying, consequences, responsibilities, necessity, sacrifice, you know, structure and order to your life, you know, real grounded responsibility. Now, Mars goes around the zodiac every 2 years and a little bit. So that age, when you're in 2 going into 3, those toddler years, terrible 2s, terrible 3s, that's your Mars return. So
Okay.
you've activated basically 2 and some change, your second year of life, you're activating your Mars.
Okay.
Mars is your autonomy. It's your independence. It's your preferences. You know, it's what you want.
Right.
So it's how you assert yourself. So what happens to human beings around that age? They're starting to learn how to do those things.
Right.
That's why they're kind of such a pain in the butt. You know? Nothing like a 3-year-old. It's like the most raw Mars energy you can imagine, right?
Yes, no.
I'm just doing whatever the hell I want,
Yeah.
and you try to make me do anything else, I'm throwing a temper tantrum, right?
Yeah.
So what happens around that age is that needs to be that needs to be met in a healthy way,
Right.
you know? And it's tricky because already as a parent you have to start disciplining your kid, while at the same time, like you have to not squash their will, you know? So you have Saturn, and it's probably related to father. It's in your house that deals with father. You have Saturn going over your Mars. So as you're like developing your will, there's like a contractive energy, or like a discipline energy, or like a structured energy that is like, you know, that's kind of like putting pressure and like tension up against your will, up against your little toddler emerging energy. It's basically, in developmental trauma literature, they call it your autonomy wound. So it's like, and so what that winds up doing is it makes someone, whatever's happening, you know, with the way you're interfacing, maybe it's your dad, maybe it's your mom though too, you know, but you're interfacing, and in some way your will, your path of how I'm asserting myself, your path of this is how I set my, you're creating how you set boundaries too that year. I mean, that's age 4, you're getting into like, this is how my autonomy works, this is how my trust works, this is how my boundaries works. That's what you're creating as a little person in those times. So there is some sort of contractive, consequential, suffery, bad dom, like forceful maybe, like type of energy that you're like hitting up against, that's either going to make you, be like, oh, I better play by the rules, or I better fit in, or I better suppress certain things, or, or I better rebel, I better like you didn't grow up, and it's just like I wasn't heard, or I wasn't respected, or my boundaries weren't respected. So then you wind up, with that kind of like rebel, like belligerently aggressive type of energy in yourself. Or you wind up with like actually I'm just gonna like, I'll play ball, like I'll just do whatever. I'm just gonna like, I'm like, I won't rebel. I won't have a healthy level of asserting myself and protecting myself or resisting. So there's that type of dynamic going on somehow. Okay. Now, there's also an eclipse in there's eclipses in your first house. I could tell you what months they were. They were going to be.
What's the significance of the first house?
That's your body.
Oh.
I mean, that's just you and your identity in your body.
What's the significance of an eclipse?
Well, it's hit your body somehow. So.
Okay.
So in 88, so in September of 88, or wait.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's 9/6, September 6th. So in September, there was an eclipse. And then, so in September there was eclipses, and then 6 months later, when the sun, so that's when the sun was in Virgo, then when the sun was in Pisces, that eclipse had Mars with, Mars was, that's interesting. Dude, that same year, so check this out, this is fascinating, this is where we start seeing the redundancy, it's interesting. So not only did you have that Saturn going over your Mars, but then your Mars is doing, Mars in the sky, that year of 88, is doing a retrograde. 88 going into 89. Mars is doing a retrograde in your second house, which is early childhood. So I mean, like, and Mars is accidents, things breaking, transgressions, violence, like, so not only do you have these two things going on that are both Mars things. You got Saturn on your Mars, and then you got Mars retrograding in your house of early childhood. So it's like your Mars energy is really getting wired at this time when, there's two challenging things happening that year, throughout the year, that's just Mars related stuff, right? So that's there, right? Now, at the same time, like I was saying, there is going to be eclipses that year in your first house, which is your body. Like I was saying, it's your body, it's your identity. The eclipses are in Pisces and Virgo, and the eclipses are, so your house of partnership is Virgo. Okay. Your house of yourself and your body and your identity is Pisces. You're a Pisces in a lot of ways, even though you're a Leo. Your chart's, Pisces is center stage. It's the first house. It's who you are. That's why there's that, like, that's why it's a big part of the reason why you're so into the spirit world, in some way, shape, or form, whether it's Christianity or whether it's your own, beliefs and, various hybrids and whatever's really going on with you, like you're a spiritual person, like, and so, but then the partner, the other, is like a practical person. It's a Virgo. It's like I'm in the practical world, tinkering, fixing things, managing things, paying attention to the details of the physical world, kind of stuff. Of course, this is inside you and outside of you. So it's like that energy's in you, but then also the partner shows up with that energy too, And so there was eclipses that year in your first and seventh house, you and partner and other. And so in some ways, I'd imagine that that's planting the seeds. What's going on with that Mars stuff? Transgression, violence, my autonomy not being respected, my autonomy being squashed, my temper tantrums being not understood and like regulated and dealt with in a healthy way, like, right? Like whatever it is, like that's also happening at the same time that your body is getting eclipses hit to it, and your house of partnership is getting eclipses hit to it. So then that's putting in these developmental trauma wounds around things like trust and autonomy that are also landing in your body and landing in your wiring for relationships. So that's kind of what jumps out at me initially looking at this.
Interesting. So I just asked you that question.
Yeah.
I'll tell you why now.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we were talking earlier, you specifically said to me, if you knew dates and times, I could look, and I bet you that I would be able to see it or whatever.
Yeah.
And you did. You saw specifically, you thought it was my father, it was my mother,
okay.
the energy and the autonomy. And then my brother with the partner thing and with my body being, the violence and, the taking of
abuse of various sorts and transgressions.
Legitimately what you just said.
Yeah.
So I gave it to you. That was 2 for 2. I had to throw it at you just to see, like, listen, we're here, we're testing the waters, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's all very correct. It's the reason why I asked you and I said, because you said to me, look, we started, it's a map. You're like, hey. And so I said to myself, well, if it's a map, like I said, let's we could go backwards, right?
Yeah,
because we know it's correct.
Totally.
Because that's something that we can prove that's true.
Yep.
We can't. You could always tell me, hey, look, I can see it here. In 10 months, you're gonna win the lottery, or some good thing, great, like whatever. And then
I've given people chart readings before where they roll into my office and they say, "Oh, I want to quit my job. I have a bunch of savings. I want you to help me invest it and pick the dates of the investments so that way I can, like invest my money well and just retire early and go buy a beach house." And then I say to them, "Okay, yeah, cool, we can do that. And I think you're gonna get divorced next year. What do you think about that?" And they say, "What are you talking about? That's so ridiculous, what. And then I say, "Okay, we'll take it with a grain of salt, whatever, you pay me to talk about what you want to talk about, but I think that I see you moving and having some real heavy stuff between your living situation and your marriage that they're about both getting it rocked, and whatever, and then a year later, I get a phone call. How did you know? He's been cheating on me. He's freaking been cheating on me. I'm divorcing him. Blah, 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 And it's just like, yeah, I knew something was coming. Like, I wasn't going to, I'm not trying to, I don't like to, go all out trying to predict every detail of everything, But it's just like, if I see someone that I know, that area of life's about to get some changes, I'll let you know. And
for sure.
And then, that happens a lot.
I can see why. It's like when you were like, hey, what's the deal with your mom?
Yeah, totally. It's like someone's gonna come up with mom. And but this is what's cool, and this is where the counseling really comes in again, is like is that what's so cool about having a map like this is that we can go into the future and we can see what's coming up and we can see, whoa, this is some of the karma and work. Like this thing that happened when you were 13, this thing that happened when you were, 20, this thing that happened when you were 3, like you're going to be dealing with that when you're 36, when you're 42, when and so here's the tools, here's the resources. There's a kid that came in, there was a kid that hit me up, wanted an astrology reading, was just so excited he wanted to be a shaman. He was so excited to just learn to be a shaman. Really smart, cool, creative, positive, awesome young guy. I'm looking at this chart and I'm just seeing dude, I mean, this sounds like a weird thing to say to you, but I want you to be really careful of finding a really bad teacher or someone you can't trust, or basically I literally said to him, kind of like joining a cult. You need to be really careful you don't go join a cult. And then he was like, yeah, cool, thanks, He disappears. Phone call 3 years later. So this is before COVID. Then at the end of COVID, phone call 3 years later. And it's him. And it's, I really need your help. I don't really have much money.
I joined a cult.
But I went and I kind of did what you said not to do. And I wound up joining this cult. And the guy was this Eastern European teacher of indigenous alchemical practices of Eastern European and my ancestry. And I went and joined his school in Pennsylvania, and it was kind of this weird compound, and then COVID hit, and then the guy was insanely paranoid, and he had us spending all this time in all these conspiracy theories with COVID and convincing us that he's like, and I got sucked into this epic hyper paranoid conspiracy land, with this group of people. And the whole time I'm living in a moldy cabin, and my health's deteriorating, and my psychological health is deteriorating. And he's like, and I wound up going back to my parents' house, basically having a schizophrenic breakdown.
Jeez,
and then I had COVID. I got COVID, and I was living in the suburbs of DC, living in a tent in my parents' backyard with COVID in the winter.
Oh Jesus!
And he's like, I'm just going crazy,
Oh my goodness! Bless you.
And he's like, and so he comes and sits down with me, and I'm just looking at this chart, and and I could see it. I'm like, okay, dude, you hit a rough spell. These last couple years, I knew, I could see that it was dangerous. And now you're kind of in you got about 4 years, and you're in a good spell, or it's the pressure's off, but then it's gonna get intense again. And so now I want you to really take this seriously. The next 4 years of your life, you're not the type of person, you need to develop very grounded, very regulated skills. You don't need to be congesting tons of ayahuasca and tons of peyote and doing really extreme intense things that could overwhelm a really sensitive person with a bunch of stored trauma in there. You need to actually be really building up your skill set, therapy wise, healthy toolkits, and so I actually sent him an email, and I sent him an email. I hadn't talked to him, that was maybe 2 years ago. I sent him an email because I was using his chart as an example in class the other day for my students, and I'm using his chart, and it made me think of him. And so I called him up, and I sent him an email, and I was like, how's it going? And his email was like, oh my God, I've just been, instead of trying to become a shaman and doing a bunch of plant medicines, I've just been at the meditation retreat center, and I'm just doing really intensive therapy, and it's just all therapy meditation, and I'm doing 100 times better, and it's all because of your advice,
Absolutely.
And it's if that kid would have been staying in that world of just doing psychoactive plants and drugs and really intense experiences and hanging out with people in conspiracy land and living way out in an isolated place with, in a few years from now, he would be losing it.
Yeah, literally. Literally, yeah.
Possibly suicidal,
yeah.
Whatever,
For sure, yeah.
And so he was like, dude, you saved my life. I mean, that's and so it's cool when you can see the timelines in the future, and you can kind of tell people, hey, this is when you need to have your shit together financially for these years, or you need to get your stuff together with your health because this is coming up and it might be challenging in these years, or this is where like, whoa, your parents are going to be having some stuff. Like, are you ready to like help take care of them if one of them gets sick, you know? And usually people have an intuitive sense of, oh yeah, I can kind of see that, like I'm messing around financially, or oh, my health's a little funny, or oh, my parents might get sick and their health's deteriorating rapidly. And so usually people have an intuitive sense of, when you're telling them a couple years down the road, I want you to kind of be preparing for this era of your life and kind of fortifying and building more capacity and resilience, you know, and really make it so you don't get caught with your pants down, and you don't get caught within that part of your life spinning out and overwhelming your scene, and you know, like, or this is like, whoa, your relationship karma is about to get real heavy in 3 years. Like, this is the 3 years you spend, like, you know, like, I mean, like maybe it's just meant to separate, whatever. But like, if you're, you know, you have a 3-year-old and you're serious about your family container, and this is the years you spend, like go to therapy now. Don't wait for 3 years, because you're going to be overwhelmed and you're going to be 3 years deep in wounding each other by then. Oof. You know, like start now, because in 3 years you're either laying the foundations for the next decade of a pattern and cycle where you're like, it's a new type of dynamic that works, or you're going to be separating, you know, and the new parent cycle is just different, you know. And it's like, you know, I don't have an agenda for anyone. Like, I mean, I tell people that, you know, like it's just like, I have no agenda. Wherever you are, on some level, that's where you need to be, and that's where the work is, you know. But like, it's helpful to, you know, know, cool, like these things from the past are going to be showing up back again in different ways, you know, the next part of the cycle, you know, in the future, and just having a sense of preparedness for it, you know.
Yeah, I do. And so then, like, what do you say to somebody like me if I say to you, all right, fine, Frank, like, I don't want to know my future, but I want you to maybe say to me, these are things that, this is how you can heal, or these are the things that you should focus on. Mm-hmm. What does that look like for you? Like, what does that sound like?
Like for you specifically?
Yeah, for example, because you're going to use my, got my little chart situation.
Yeah. I mean, for you specifically, I would say... And
I frame it this way, especially because some people are maybe skeptical of... Mm-hmm. Like, I frame it this way specifically, and I'll tell you why. Mm-hmm. There's a school of thought, an argument that could be said, well, Frank, you told him to watch out for joining a cult, and he spent too much time thinking about joining a cult where he was magnetically attracted to the cult because of the fact that the ideal was implanted in his head.
I said don't join a cult.
For example, right? Because people would say that.
Like, don't hit the red button.
And then you hit the red button, that kind of thing, right?
And well, I'll say a couple things about that. Straight up, I mean, I tell all my clients this. Astrology is just one toolkit, and it's a mixed bag. You don't need astrology, you know? No one needs astrology, right? So what you need is to listen to your body. What you need is cultivating inner peace. What you need is to tap in and listen to your soul, you know? Like, this is a map that's one tool to help you do that. Just like listening to your dreams is another one. Just like somatic therapy is another one. Just like basically any mystical or contemplative, you know, or prophetic spiritual tradition is another one. You know what I mean? Like, and so, I mean, it's like everyone's just going to get their different tools, and astrology is going to land and be available for people when they're ready for it and when it's a useful tool for them, you know? But not everyone needs astrology, for sure, you know? And I'll say this, is that ultimately, and this is why I go so deep with the star lore and the mythology, right? Because, dude, it's a mystery. Like, really, like, and that just, like, it's fun to have a map. Just like in life, it's fun to have a plan. It's fun to set 5-year goals. It's cool and meaningful and purposeful and useful to set 5-year goals, to set a 10-year goal for your career, to set a goal for the next 3 years for your budget, to set, you know, like, it's getting married and committing to someone, you know, whatever. It's great to plan, you know, and life is plan B. You know, plan A is your fantasies and desires and projections and imagination, and real life is plan B, you know? And real life is the mystery unfolding, you know?
Yeah.
And the universe fashions itself on you, you know? You're fashioned together and sculpted and molded by all of these realities and variables and things that, you know, you don't have control over, and really surrendering to the mystery, you know. Some people might call it submitting to God, you know. Other people might call it, you know, attuning to the unfolding process of life, you know. But surrendering to the mystery is really like that's primary. That's ground zero. That's front and center. And then once you, because to some extent, you know, especially with the modern psychology and how we're all kind of, the modern world makes us all kind of subtle, unconscious control freaks. You know what I mean? I mean, COVID showed us that more than anything, you know, is just like, whoa, we do not like when we, like, the modern civilized mind, you know, does not like, whoa, we're not in control. And the truth is, we're at an era in world history and the evolution of our species and the ecology of planet Earth where we're not in control. You know? We are not in control. And the people who are in control are not in control. You know? Like, did you see that movie Obama produced? Did you hear about this?
No, tell me.
Yeah, so Obama produced a movie called When the World Stops. And it's hilarious. It made this whole huge fuss on social media because it's basically like, I mean, on social media it became this whole racial thing because there's this very grounded together like black family and there's this white family and they're like just flipping out and like mess. You know, and so all these people were like, "Oh my gosh, look at Obama making the white people look bad." You know, it was like this whole like kind of bullshit thing. You know, but that aside, like, it was a genius movie, dude. And what it is, it's this white family wakes up in New York City, and they're like, and the mom's like, "Hey, we're gonna go on a vacation. Surprise! I got a last minute Airbnb really cheap. Like, let's go. Pack up your bags." And they drive out to Long Island to a beach house. And then like the people are just, you know, they just check in. It's not like there's anyone there. It's just a normal Airbnb, but it's kind of a mansion, like a beach house mansion. And then they're there, and while they're there, there's basically like systematic cyber warfare on the United States, and the entire communication and transportation system is like crashing. Like planes are dropping out of the sky. Boats are crashing into the shore. Like, it's almost like a caricature of how dramatic it can be, you know?
Okay.
Like nothing's working, no computers, no phones. Like, and then the whole society starts unraveling really fast, right? And then like people aren't, and then people are basically starting to like riot in cities and stuff, you know? And the people who own the house that the white family's staying at is this African American family. And he's like a stockbroker. He's like a really high powered. He's this black guy that's like a really high powered stockbroker, and so he comes back to his house to be like, yeah. Did you see it? Did you see
now
it?
that you're as we go through it, I'm like,
you remember it, okay?
Yes, I didn't know that Obama produced that.
Yeah,
okay,
Obama was the producer of that movie, right? And the best part of the movie that hit me was when the stockbroker guy is telling the story to the white lady about he's like, I have very, very like high in power in the government, in the Pentagon, clients, and you know, and he's like and they tell me things, secrets, you know, and he's basically saying, he's like, and he's like, he called me up the other day and he said, be prepared and go home with your family and be safe. And he's like, and this guy was always joking. He's a funny guy, and he's like, I'm used to him joking. And he's like, I thought he was joking with me, so I'm like playing around with him and joking. And he's like, no, I'm serious. And he's like, but, and he's like, I'm trying to reconcile what he's trying to say to me. He's like, he's basically telling me shit's about the fan. And then he's like, but I mean, but you have control of it, right? Like, you're like the power elite. You're in control of this situation. And he's like, and the guy's like, nah, no one's in control. That moment of the movie, I was like, I think Obama is basically telling us no one's really in control. There's no one steering this ship, y'all. Like, get ready. Like, this shit's kind of weird and spinning out of control, and there actually isn't even some like evil guy on top pushing the buttons in control. Like, there's just like no one's in control. It's just this machine that's like spinning out, you know? And like, and that's kind of like, you know, on some level existentially as a human being on planet Earth right now, that's where we are. Like, we're not in control, you know, no one's in control of like, and so I just say all this because the psychology of talking to modern people and counseling, you know, is like, it really, like, you don't want to turn this into a control game, you know, like healing is not a control game. Evolving your soul is not a control game. You know, like, and having a really powerful toolkit like this, you know, like I remember talking to the person who designed this computer software and when I realized what I could do with it, I said to them, gosh, you know, just imagine if we could go back 1,000 years ago and some powerful, you know, emperor or king, or, you know, king of Persia or India, you know, like, if you could, you know, be like, check out this computer program, what I can do with it, you know? Like, they would trade you like half their kingdom for this software. You know what I mean? Like, because they were obsessed with this stuff, being able to predict everything for the, you know, like the dates, starting a war, launching of this, changing the kinship, you know, the whole thing, you know, it's crazy, you know? So it's like, so this is like a really powerful thing. And so I think the humility that you start with it is like, this is not to feed the ego and control. This is to kind of humble you into realizing how complex things are, how many variables there are, and how much of it is still an unfolding mystery, you know?
I like that a lot.
I mean, I told my one of my friend's kids a couple years ago, we were looking at her chart, and I was like, dude, you know, she was young, and I was like, I bet you text and drive, you know, and stuff. And she was like, yeah. And I was like, I knew she drove a lot because she lived far away from her job. And I was like, I see you getting in a car wreck. And I don't want you texting and driving this summer. Like you do not need to be texting and driving because I could see you getting in a car wreck. And she was like, wow, that's kind of an intense thing to say. Okay, I'll just drive extra careful. I gave her this very specific like 2-week window. And I was like, pay extra close attention. And she's like, cool, I will. And she did. And I saw her a couple months after that window of time, and she was like, you will not believe what happened. She's like, I got in a car wreck, but it wasn't my fault. I was literally driving, and someone came plowing through a red light out of nowhere and sideswiped my car. But now here's the kicker, right? The difference between her texting and driving and causing the accident and hurting someone versus her driving extra safe and still the car wreck happens, but it's not her fault. She's safe. She didn't injure anyone. His insurance has to pay for it. You know, like the car wreck still happened, but like having the tip of like pay extra close attention, like the presence and attention of heightening it for that specific time, for that area of life, made it so that even when the shit happened, it was like, it wasn't the worst case. It was like the best case scenario. If you're going to get a car wreck, best case scenario.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I hear that now. It reminds me of like how you said the divine sort of like marker. It's almost like this divine heads up.
Totally.
Like, hey, look, this could happen.
Totally.
Like, sure, you could get slapped,
yeah.
right? It could really hurt, or you could like maybe be in a slapping competition. I don't know, you know, like
right,
because
totally.
You know, you could win $100 getting slapped.
Yeah,
you know, who knows,
totally.
right? I like that though. I like that a lot. I like the way that you explain it a lot.
It's helpful when you see it that way.
Yeah,
because you're not in control. Sometimes bad stuff's still going to happen, but when you have the mindset of, whoa, this is the mystery unfolding. I'm not in control. I'm just here to be a humble person. I'm here to respond, responsibility, respond ability. I'm here to respond well to whatever happens, and I understand how, especially when we get in these personal containers, human sexuality, human relationships, money, family, when you actually can see, because that's what most of us are caught up in, None of us are actually thinking about that car wreck that's happening in 6 months from now. That's just like we're actually thinking about how the hell am I going to be dealing with my husband or my job or my kid or whatever in 3 months from now, And so it's like it's just really helpful to be able to go back and understand what is the energy centers, the psychological centers, the patterns, the archetypal energies. The deities. These are the ancient world deities. Venus is the goddess of love. Mars is the goddess of boundaries and aggression. Mercury is the god of magic and trade and exchange in your mind and thought. And so understanding how to it's really kind of like, how do we honor the gods? Is how I think about it. Sure. Gosh, I met a Iraq war veteran who, God, he was in the Battle of Fallujah. The Battle of Fallujah. He was a Marine. So Fallujah was like, it was like the bloodiest combat since like the Vietnam War for like American soldiers. It was like the heart of the Iraq war when it was like intense guerrilla resistance, street fighting, city, like alley by alley, street by street, and it was like the Marines, and he was in it. He was like in extreme combat, and was telling me all these crazy stories, and then he got out, and he told me that the first thing he did was he got back to whatever like military base on the coast of Georgia or North Carolina or whatever, and he said he like went into the sand, outside the military base, and just made a ginormous peace sign, like right outside the military base, like in the sand, and he became like kind of he just kind of wound up becoming like a peace advocate.
I can understand why.
But dude, the shit that was crazy was this guy, when I met him, he was a friend of mine from high school. He was his neighbor. Okay. Check this out. I'm not making this up. He's like, I had like a anti-war newspaper in college that I was like the editor of.
Okay, all right.
It was like this like activist, environmentalist, anti-war newspaper, and he saw it, and so he wanted to meet me. And so I go, hey, and this guy's like a Marine veteran. He's like buff, almost scrawny little college kid, and we go out to a bar, and we're just rapping and enjoying each other's company. And then all of a sudden, he's like, oh, trouble just came in, and I'm like, what? And he's like, see those guys that just walked in, and there was like 4, like shady looking like dudes walking to the bar, and it's just me and this Marine at this table, and he's like they're gonna mess with me, and I was like, what? Why? And he's like, well, one of those guys is my girlfriend's ex-boyfriend, and he was like, she broke up with him and got with me, and then I went to Iraq, and he's like harasses her and stuff sometimes, like when I was out of the country, and we've had some like words, and like and he's like totally some shady character, and he's like they're gonna come over and mess with us. And I'm just like, us? Like, but me? Like, you're including me in this? Like, I'm not any part of this, dude.
We just met.
Yeah, totally. And he's like, just play it cool. And I'm just like, okay, like, And I'm like, these guys have guns, I'm just like, look at these guys. I'm just like, these guys are like, They probably have guns. They look like drug dealers. They're just like look so shady, you know. They're gonna come and mess with us. What is going on? And then sure enough, within like a couple minutes, they spot him. They come over to us. Like they're all like grinning and looking tough and stuff. And they come up to our table at the bar. And they start talking smack to this Marine, and you know, calling him all kinds of horrible profanities and stuff, and names, calling his girlfriend names and stuff, and I'm just like, we're gonna get the crap beat out of us, you know, like this is not looking good for us, you know. There's 4 of them and 2 of me, and like I'm like I couldn't take any of these guys, you know. like I'm a liability in this situation. I'm an asset.
I'm not here to help.
You know, and then he gets in the Marine's face, and the Marine's just sitting on the bar stool, just like hearing this, and the guy's talking smack and threatening him and stuff. And then in like a split second, like lightning fast, like split second, the Marine flies out of his seat and grabs the dude by the arms and is holding his arms down to his side and starts crying. And he's looking in the dude's face, like, and he's like, you need to leave me alone. And there's like tears coming down his face. He's like, I've just spent years of my life killing people, and the last thing I want to do is hurt anyone. So leave me alone. Oh wow. And everyone is just like, damn, respect. Like, that's real. Heard that. Like, we're not messing with this guy anymore. Wow. You know? And all the dudes just like were like, whoa, and they just left. And I was just like, oh my God, that was the coolest thing I've ever seen. You know, like, I can't believe you just did that. I can't believe you just, like, you know, talk about trauma healing and regulation of your nervous system and like holding it together, you know, dude. Like, that is like, and vulnerability and honesty and courage, and yeah, dude.
And just being like emotionally freaking tapped in, totally, and like not like scared to like tell other people how you feel, totally, and show them how you feel,
you know, for sure.
That's like hashtag crying is the strongest thing you can do. Totally. Like literally. Totally. Whoa.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
That's crazy.
So, yeah.
Frank, wow. Well, listen, it's been a blessing. Let me ask you, can you give me a soundbite for you, just so I can throw it at the end of the episodes? Like, yeah, totally. You know, a little bit of a plug, sort of like, this is your time to sell, hard sell, Frank.
Yeah, sure. So I mean, you kind of know what I do. It's astrology. I do storytelling. I do star lore. I do all sorts of astrology consultations. And my website is Medicine of the Starry Heavens, medicineofthestarryheavens.com. And yeah, you can pretty much find whatever you need to find on there, on my website, on my Facebook page.
Thank you for listening to Loving Kindness Every Day. Next, we will play a preview for our coming episodes. Be sure to follow and subscribe.
I am so incredibly proud of you. You know, I am so proud of what you're doing.
This is my name. This is where I'm from. This is what I have to say. Say it for one more time. This is my name.
My name is Anya, and I'm originally from Germany, and I miss my son Alexander. I love him so much. I love you so much, and I just want you to open up communication with me again, because I'm really hurting, and I miss you.
Your mom loves you, Alexander, so much.
I'm so proud of you for what you're doing.
$25,000. I told him what the need was, and he said, I have $25,000 for you. Will that help? And I was like, yes.
Hi, my name is Pam, and I just want to say that when things get tough, pray. Pray for guidance to give you inspiration to move on.
It came right at the right time, right when we needed it. He said, it looks like you guys aren't done, but you're close, and you might need help. Do you need help? $25,000. I told him what the need was, and he said, I have $25,000 for you. Will that help? And I was like, yes. Amazing.
With all these conversations,
That's wild. We out here having fun, bro.
I think looking at other people, being that I'm the youngest of 7, or I'm second to the youngest of 7, seeing older brothers and sisters, grow up and go through things, and I realized through seeing them do stuff that stuff is not gonna kill you. You know what I'm saying? Having bad credit is not gonna kill you. You know what I'm saying? Getting tickets or having accidents and shit, that shit's not gonna kill you. You know what I'm saying? And if it's not gonna kill you, then it's not that bad. You know what I'm saying? It's not. Like, I don't think it is. It's like, okay, fuck it. I didn't get the job, but I didn't try to get this job then. You know what I'm saying? Or I didn't get the money this way, or we get it this way. You know what I'm saying? It's never a fuck, I'm just gonna give up because this shit ain't working. Like, nah, especially if you're doing something that you like to do, you know what I'm saying? Then you just do it. You do you, whether you get the money or not, you know what I'm saying? You're doing what you love. They say you're not working if you're doing what you love, you know what I'm saying? It's not working.
And you could never be broken unless you actually just believe you're broken, but even then, it's still broken.
And I think nowadays, especially, it's like we as humans, we're just all trying to find hope.
There's layers of, your childhood that are, and it's, your childhood really shows up in your adult.
Based on everything, my parents' divorce and just stuff that had happened to me as a youth. Again, more of the cracks started showing a little bit, and things aren't just, all rosy and peachy and that kind of thing. And so, working through those things, I think I tried to seek out relationships, women, sort of seek out female relationships in my life to kind of, I would say, maybe nurse some of those wounds, if I could call it that. Probably some separation stuff that happened with mom growing up. And so, got married pretty early in life. In my mid-20s, I met this guy at work, and we hit it off. And I think at the end of the day, I was looking for someone to help. I don't want to say help complete me, but it was really more of, this was a person that I felt like I just couldn't live without.
And the thing is, like, every person has their own individual traumas, right? So some people go through sexual trauma, some people go through, verbal abuse, verbal trauma. They go through, self-esteem trauma, where like they have a parent or people that are older, or family members where they abuse them and put their self-esteem down, and they have issues with that. Some people go through body issues, and they're big. Kids actually do have. There's children that are not fed properly, where they gain so much weight that they're really, really obese for their age, and so that becomes a trauma itself. And then later on in life, so there's so many layers of trauma for every person.
I hope you can hear us moving around and eating and having a good time and chit-chatting, because that's like basically the point of the show. I just want you to feel like you're here with us, that you're here with me, that you can understand just a sliver, a taste, a slice of my life. And I mean, damn, I hope it encourages you. I really do. Like, I'm only out here trying to do good for y'all and for myself too. And shout out to Spelman College Dance Department. Yeah. Okay, Wessel. I'm gonna help you. I'm gonna heal together with you. We're gonna heal together, and we're gonna fix things. I'm gonna fix things, especially here in Atlanta. Anyway, this is my story. I'm just gonna fill it out here for you. My name is Calloway. Talk about that every day. I guess you can call this another intro, okay? Anyway, I love you. Thanks for listening. Thanks for checking it out. Thanks for. My name is Calloway, and this is Loving Kindness Every Day. And not trying to trauma bond with me out on the street.